Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Chicago Board of Education meeting. Today is July 22nd, 2020. We are holding today's meeting in the boardroom at 42 West Madison Street. I am Miguel del Valle on behalf of my fellow board members. Thank you for joining us today. The regular meeting of Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020 is hereby called to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Member Rome,
Here.
Member Melendez,
Here.
Vice President Reveluri,
Here.
Member Ted Breland,
Here.
Member Truss,
Here.
Member Sotelo,
Here.
and President Del Valle.
Here.
We have 5 members present, and we have 2 board members via telephone conference. I would also like to recognize Dr. Janice Jackson, our CEO, Joseph Moriarty, our General Counsel, Latanya McDade, our Chief Education Officer, and Arnie Rivera, our Chief Operating Officer. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to comment on this extraordinary moment we find ourselves in. This is the first meeting we've had since we moved into phase 4, which allows for gatherings of up to 50 people as long as the appropriate health and safety protocols are followed. As such, you will note that some board members and some CPS staff are back in the boardroom for today's meeting. Public participation will be occurring via teleconference versus Zoom. We appreciate your patience. As we navigate our ever-changing world, we anticipate that this will be an iterative process that will take steps forward and unfortunately may sometimes have to take steps backwards to preserve public health. This is not just an issue for us, this is new for everyone. And we will need to remain flexible while always putting public health and safety at the forefront of our decisions. Grounded in CDC, IDPH, and CDPH guidance, we are not yet ready to welcome the public back into the building for this meeting. To that point, for this month, while some board members and limited staff are in person, we are still limiting public participation to 15 because of the technological complexities of calling into the boardroom, as you will experience today. One of the things that has been most important to this board from the beginning of our tenure has been increasing community engagement. Over the last year, we have taken steps through the addition of our board committees and increased office hours to do just that. CPS has also taken great strides to increase engagement through things like the school funding budget engagement sessions, the capital budget engagement sessions, and the engagement sessions that will happen next week around the school reopening plan, which I encourage everyone to participate in. Your voice is important and your voice matters. While adjusting to the COVID-19 pandemic has required us to reduce public comment during board meetings during the last few months, we are planning to adopt systems to increase the number of public participants at future board meetings in accordance with public health guidance. We hope to get back to our normal 60 participants in public participation. We appreciate your patience and understanding as we adjust to the situation we find ourselves in. The order of the meeting will be as follows: honoring excellence, CEO remarks, committee updates and announcements, public participation via electronic format, presentation on COVID-19 and updates, and then followed by discussion of public agenda items, vote on public agenda items, vote on executive session items, and then adjournment. Chief McDade, please proceed with honoring excellence.
Good morning. Thank you, President Del Valle, and greetings to the board. We will begin today's Board of Education.
I have the honoring excellence recipients on the line.
Thank you.
We will begin today's Board of Education meeting by welcoming the outstanding CPS educators who were honored last school year by the Golden Apple Foundation. We are excited to have 5 of these honorees joining us by phone today. Please join me in acknowledging Mary Kovacs, a 5th grade teacher at Carl von Linné Elementary, Colleen McKenna, a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing students at Chase Elementary, Paloma Salcedo, a transitional bilingual teacher at Brighton Park Elementary, Michael Stewart, a 7th and 8th grade math and social studies teacher at Learn South Chicago, and Janine Wahabe, a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher at John B. Murphy Elementary. These incredible teachers were selected from more than 700 nominees, and we could not be more proud of all they have accomplished and all that they have contributed to our schools. We are also pleased to congratulate Dr. Teresita Perry, the principal of Dixon Elementary School, on receiving the Golden Apple Award for Excellence in Leadership. I am thrilled to welcome Alan Mather, president of the Golden Apple Foundation and former CPS teacher, principal, and chief officer, to say a few words and introduce our Golden Apple winners, who will also share a few words with us this morning. Alan?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chief McDade and Dr. Jackson, Chief McDade, members of the board. Thank you so much for honoring these incredible CPS teachers and this amazing principal. As Chief McDade said, we have a reading teacher in Mary Kovacs who takes students who are not interested in reading and makes them passionate. Colleen McKenna, who teaches across all content areas for the deaf and hard of hearing and not only helps students recognize their strengths, but also self-advocate. Paloma is a bilingual teacher who honors both the students' heritage language and builds on that in a new language. Michael helps students understand that math has relevance in their lives and creates curiosity to further explore that. Janine helps students understand both current and historical oppression and creates advocates for a better world. And as you said with Dr. Perry, she is a leader who from childhood through the present has been part of her school community. She affirms the good that people do, challenges them to be their best, and supports them when they take risks in the best interest of children. We are so pleased at the Golden Apple Foundation that you are honoring them. For 35 years, we have been honoring excellence in teaching, and for 5 years, we've been recognizing school leaders. Every year, 10 teachers and 1 to 2 principals across the entire state are honored with the Golden Apple Awards for excellence in teaching and school leadership. The teacher recipients receive a $5,000 cash award and a paid sabbatical at Northwestern University, our incredible partner for 35 years. School leader awardees receive a $10,000 award, half to their schools and half for their own development, as well as classes at Northwestern. But they can't get a sabbatical because we have trouble finding, substitute principals. Most important to that is that these awardees become members of our Academy of Educators and help prepare the next generation of great teachers. As all of you know, there's a dire teacher shortage and a shortage of teachers of color in Chicago and across the state. We have 800 undergraduates right now, our Golden Apple Scholars. We're preparing to teach in schools of need across the state. They are diverse, talented, and are committed to teaching in our schools, and we need more scholars. We need more Marys and Colleens and Palomas and Michaels and Janines and Teresitas in Chicago and across the state. We want these award recipients to inspire their students as well as others to become Golden Apple Scholars and help prepare them through our tuition assistance and up to 6 years of support. But we want them to use these incredible gifts and talents to help teach the skills necessary to change the lives of students the way they do every day. I'd be remiss if I did not say, if you're already thinking of amazing educators in your life, you can go to goldenapple.org and nominate today a pre-K through 3rd grade teacher for next year's award. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for continuing to recognize these phenomenal educators.
Thank you, Alan. We'll now have a few words from a few of our honorees.
Do you want to proceed with the video from Dr. Perry? Or after the remarks?
I would say after.
So
Good morning.
can you state
Good
your,
morning. My name is Mary Kovac from Lene Elementary School. I want to thank you for inviting me here today. Thank Alan Mather and the Golden Apple Foundation for their amazing work supporting teachers and educators. And congratulations to my fellow Golden Apple winners. It's an honor to stand with you.
do we have any other Golden Apple recipients on the conference line?
Good morning. Go ahead.
This is Colleen McKenna here from Chase Elementary School. I first just want to say thank you for having us here today. It really means a lot. And I'm just so honored and appreciative now to be a part of this fellowship to help mentor teachers. And, I feel like with this honor, it's my responsibility now to use this platform to bring more awareness and definitely more educators in the field of deaf education. So I'm just really grateful for this opportunity to be able to do that. Thanks again for having us here today. Hi, this is Paloma Salcedo. I was very honored to be awarded the Golden Apple Award, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with their scholars. I started my career at CPS as an office assistant at George Westinghouse College Press by Dr. Jackson when it first opened, and then I became SECA before I went back to school to become a teacher. So it has definitely been an arduous journey, but I'm very grateful to everyone that has helped me along the path to becoming a bilingual teacher. Currently, I have the most amazing administration at my school. Shout out to Dr. Haas and Mr. Cunningham at Brighton Park, who are very supportive and they believed in me. So I feel really lucky to have them as my principals. Now I'm happy that I get to share my experiences with the Golden Apple Scholars and help to elevate their understanding of the importance of bilingual education in our schools. After serving as an ELPT in my school this past year, I learned that we have over 70,000 students in CPS that are EL, and therefore it is important that teachers continue learning about bilingual programs and how they can make learning accessible to students while also valuing their strengths and cultures in the classroom. So I hope to continue learning best practices and work with my students so that I can give them the skills that they need to have success in the future. So thank you very much for your time and this acknowledgement today. It means a lot.
Good morning. This is Michael Stewart. I am a product of the Chicago Public School System. I'd like to say thank you to the Golden Apple Foundation and the Chicago Board of Education. I am honored and privileged to share this space with so many transformative teachers and leaders. I look forward to the inevitable growth that will come from being part of this organization and the opportunity, like so many of my colleagues have said, to share my love and passion for this truly complex and consequential art with the future generations of educators. Thank you so much.
This is Janine Rowe with Mercy School. I want to say thank you to Mercy School, to Golden Apple, and the board. But as we speak of excellence, I want to uplift the excellence of Chicago students who are leading our city in demanding justice. The excellence of Miracle Boyd, a 2020 CPS graduate and a member of Good Kids Mad City. On Friday, we witnessed Miracle being violently assaulted by Chicago police for doing the very things we teach our students to do, for standing up for what she believes in, taking informed action, for being a freedom fighter. As an educator, it is unacceptable to me that we are spending $33 million for CPD, an entity that beats, drugs, and incarcerates our students, an entity that protects vestiges of white supremacy instead of our Black and brown youth. Instead, we need to invest in the excellence and humanity of our young people, invest in the resources our community desperately needs, especially in this time of crisis. On access to technology for remote learning, and a counselor and a nurse in every school community every day, on restorative justice and trauma responsive support. I implore you to show your excellence now by standing on the side of justice, on the side of our students and families, and on the right side of history. Thank you.
Is,
Hi, this is Mary Kovacs from Lene Elementary School. I'm sorry I had technical difficulties before. Thank you for having me here, and thank Alan Mather and the Golden Apple Foundation. And congratulations to my fellow winners. It's an honor to stand with you. Education is a civil right that's currently under attack in our federal government. It's essential to fund public education and support teachers and students so that we succeed. Public schools cannot become for-profit businesses focused on dollars and test scores. As a teacher, I know my students need to learn history that includes themselves. They need to learn empathy and conflict resolution through literature, and they need to find their voice in writing and speaking. If our students are successful in school, they will have the tools to step up and have a seat at the table. In these difficult times, it's imperative that we listen to and respect each other's struggles and invest in all members of our city. Thank you for all you do.
is our principal, Dr. Perry, on the line?
She's unable to join us, but she does have a video message for us.
Okay. Mhm.
Good morning, Dr. Jackson, Chief McDade, board members, and guests. I want to first thank all of you for acknowledging the great work Dixon has exemplified for decades. Thank you to the Golden Apple Foundation and to Mayor Lightfoot for recognizing our wonderful teachers and administrators in Chicago and in Illinois. I'm not just speaking for me, I'm speaking for a community, and not just the Chatham community, but the Black community. When I say that I'm very proud to be surrounded by so many hardworking African-American children and teachers who exude so much grit, drive, and resiliency. The Golden Apple is for the legacy of Dixon, my assistant principal, my teachers, all of my staff, my parents, and of course, my students. I want to thank Chief Parks and all of the Network 12 principals and assistant principals for all of your support. This Golden Apple is for you. Thank you again for this recognition. Love you.
Thank you to all of our Golden Apple winners for going above and beyond for your students every single day. We feel so lucky to count you among the CPS family. I am pleased to share that some CPS schools have now resumed summer sports programming for their student athletes. One of our district's primary goals is to educate the whole child, which means actively supporting athletics and other extracurricular activities, even during these unusual times. Of course, the presence of COVID-19 requires that we do this very carefully, and our principals, coaches, and athletic directors and families have now been given a set of guidelines for keeping everyone safe during summer athletic programs. These guidelines were created by our Sports Administration Department under the leadership of our new Executive Director, Mr. David Rosengard. They are aligned to the Illinois High School Association's Return to Play guidelines and meet standards set by the Chicago Department of Public Health. The majority of summer sports programming will take place outdoors, and several protocols have been put in place to ensure safety. These include daily temperature checks, fixed student athlete pods, set entry and exit procedures, and the mandatory use of face coverings when social distancing is not possible. While we haven't made a decision about the return of high school sports in the fall, we know athletics are important to many of our students, and we are committed to supporting their talents. Sports serve as a valuable opportunity for students to work as a team and develop important life skills. CPS will continue to support these opportunities with our top priority remaining the health and safety of all student athletes and staff. Mr. President, this concludes my prepared remarks.
Thank you. I also want to, on behalf of the board, congratulate all Golden Apple recipients. We know that you are serving our children well. Many of you are recipients of this prestigious award because you're all going the extra miles that are necessary, that our children need for you to do. And so we thank you and congratulations, and thank you for your advocacy as well. Thank you. CEO Dr. Jackson, we are ready for your remarks.
Good morning, Can I take? No. I don't know the rules. All right. Good morning, everyone. First, I want to echo the thanks to all of the Golden Apple winners today. Thank you for your leadership in our school buildings. Thank you for your advocacy here today and for serving as role models for both our students as well as your colleagues. I also want to give a special shout out to Principal Teresita Perry. We're very proud of you and proud of Dixon. And also Paloma Salcedo, who mentioned that she got her start fresh out of college at Westinghouse College Prep. It's been an honor to see the growth in your career, and it was no surprise to see that you were one of the winners this year. So congratulations. On July 17th, you can tell where my head is, CPS released a preliminary framework for reopening schools this fall. Before we go into the details of those plans, I want to stress how important it is that we hear feedback and input from our students, families, educators, as well as our community partners over the next 10 days. We need all of our stakeholders to help us decide how we safely re-enter school in the fall. Your feedback is critical, and whatever plans we put in place have to include input from those various stakeholders. I encourage all of you who have a vested interest in our district to visit our website at cps.edu/CPS Reopening 2020 to view our preliminary framework, complete the brief survey that is online, and we also encourage you to attend the upcoming community meetings that we will be hosting throughout the rest of the month. We will host 5 virtual meetings to gather feedback. Details regarding that event can also be found on the website that I just mentioned. Once this public comment period ends at the end of this month, it is our goal to release our preliminary plan at the beginning of August. It's important for people to know that the plan that we're putting in place is just that. Our goal is to ensure that we can cautiously reopen schools, and we will only do that if it is safe and a responsible thing to do. The plan that you will find on our website allows for the type of flexibility that is needed given our current situation, and it allows for full-time at-home learning for students and families who believe that that is the best option for them. And we also have flexibility for in-person instruction, which we have heard from an overwhelming majority of folks as being critically important. If the health conditions change, we will not enter school. It is important to note that we are working hand in hand with the city's Department of Health in order to make this decision. Whatever the reality is this fall, we are determined to provide all of our students with a high quality education that meets their academic, social, and emotional needs. By completing our reopening survey, our families and school communities can do a lot of help in order to help us achieve this goal. I want to thank those who completed our initial survey, as much of your feedback was incorporated into the plan that is online today. I would also like to thank all of the stakeholders who have already provided feedback through our annual regional analysis process, otherwise known as ARA. We hosted these meetings over the past few weeks, and we had over 700 CPS families attend the different workshops. I would also like to acknowledge the board members who attended those meetings. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and thank you for showing up. The facilitators in these meetings helped our families interpret the data specific to their region, and we initiated a conversation around productive outcomes for your respective community. We are excited for our communities, and we look forward to continuing this learning either in person or remotely. If you have not had a chance to look at the latest ARA, it can also be found on our website, cps.edu/ARA. Finally, today, I want to provide a brief update on the role of school resource officers in our schools. This remains an important issue for many of our school communities, and we are committed to ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. I continue to believe that the elected local leaders should be the ones to make those choices for their schools. Our job as a school district is to provide them with data, resources, and research in order for them to make well-informed decisions. We have now provided all principals and local school councils with the toolkit on the subject of SROs, as well as school level data as well as school level data. And we recently hosted a webinar to walk local school council chairs through the proper ways to engage communities around this important issue. As part of our commitment to transparency, a list of schools that currently have SROs in their buildings, along with the scheduled date of their LSC votes, will be posted on our website by the end of this week. Again, you can go to our website at cps.edu/vote SRO to find that information. Regardless of each school's decision about the role of SROs, CPS remains completely committed to creating a safe environment for all of our students. Mr. President, this concludes my prepared remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We'll proceed to committee updates. Vice President Revoluri, you have an update regarding the Finance and Audit Committee?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the past, the Finance and Audit Committee meetings have happened just before these meetings, about once a quarter. They have not generally been very attended or watched, but we've tried to use them as a way to report out to the whole community about the current state of the district's budget and to examine some of the risks that the district faces. Going forward, this committee will continue to do those things, but will be structured more like our other board committees, in particular to engage with the public more actively on these important topics. As President Devaya mentioned just a few minutes ago, in the last year, we've started and continued some really important conversations about our school portfolio, about school ratings and accountability, about school budgeting and capital projects. And we've really worked to have robust public engagement in all of these conversations. These are not really separate conversations, they're interrelated. And one thing that ties them all together is the need to support all of these streams of work from our available sources of revenue. But between the pandemic, economic shutdowns and dislocations, and significant government budget uncertainty at the city, state, and federal levels, it's going to become only more important for the board and the whole community to understand the revenue situation and to look several years ahead. And so to this end, the Finance and Audit Committee will be conducting some public meetings to build this understanding by drawing on sources of expertise inside and outside the district. These meetings will proceed in parallel with phase 2 of the school funding working group, which conducted phase 1 earlier this year. And we intend for them to start in September or maybe October to allow the CPS budget team to focus on finalizing the district's fiscal 2021 budget in the next month, while we face obviously very fluid situation educationally, operationally, health-wise, and financially. And so we will share more information about what the committee will be doing through the CPS board website in the coming months.
Thank you. Now for announcements. Please use our website, cpsboe.org, if you need to seek assistance or want to meet with a board member during office hours. We encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to meet with board members outside of the board meeting. Madam Secretary, please share the details of the next board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 26, 2020. Advanced registration will open at 10:30 a.m. Monday, August 24, 2020, and will close Tuesday, August 25, 2020 at 5 p.m. or until all slots are filled, whichever is first. If anyone has any questions about this process, please contact the board office for our assistance. I would also like to note for the record, the board will announce if the August 26th meeting will be virtual or in public via the cpsboe.org website. Please monitor the cpsboe.org website for more information. Thank you.
Let's now proceed with today's public participation session. As a reminder, union representatives will speak before public participation, and any elected officials will speak after the conclusion of public participation. Madam Secretary, please share the rules of public participation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the public who registered to speak were given information to access this meeting virtually via telephone conference. We did this so that speakers with limited or no access to internet or who may have weak internet connection could still participate using their phones. Also, members of the public may submit written comments for Board of Education meetings via email at boe@cps.edu or mail to 1 North Dearborn, Suite 950. Written comments received between the day of the public agenda is posted through 5 p.m. The day after the Board of Education meeting will be submitted to the board and published within 5 business days on our website at www.cpsboe.org. Speakers, please listen while I provide directions for public participation. In order to facilitate and expedite public participation, I will be calling speakers out of order and grouping them. I will call your name and number when it is your turn to speak. Once you hear your name, please state your name for the record. I will then start the 2-minute timer. When there are 30 seconds remaining, I will inform you so that you can proceed to conclude your remarks to allow for the next speaker to begin. Thank you. So, Mr. President, we do have 2 union reps that will address the board this morning, and we'll proceed with those 2 speakers first, and then proceed with the speakers list. Our first speaker will be Jesse Sharkey, please, CTU President.
Transferring Jesse Sharkey, President of the CTU.
Thank you. Mr. Sharkey, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning to the members of the board, President of IA, CEO Jackson and the team. I'm Jesse Sharkey, President of CTU. As you know, the CTU is.
Mr. Sharkey, can you hear me? Let's try to reach Mr. Sharkey again, please. They're trying to call him back.
Do we have the second
He's
representative
not
on the line?
either.
Okay.
So if you give us just 1 second, we'll just wait a few minutes. Mr. President, if you'd like, I could proceed by calling the first speaker, then they have the first speaker on the line.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So we'll proceed with the speakers list, please. Speaker number 1.
I have speaker number 1 on the line.
Thank you. Speaker number 1, Mr. President, is Jianan Chi. Please proceed.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Shi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Can you please proceed?
Thank you. Good morning, y'all. John Amchi, raise your hand. While there are many important qualities to this initial CPS framework, our parents have way more questions before deciding if this makes sense for them. I'm sure none of you are surprised that we have over 7 pages of questions. Parents see hybrid models as an important stage on the path to full instruction. The question is if this is the right moment. First of all, parents want transparent science metrics that will dictate the transition from different models, similar to the reopening phases in Chicago. Currently, CPS is asking parents to take a ride with them, and parents want to know way more before getting in the car. We believe in quality over quantity of learning. We believe that remote learning is our foundation, and improving remote learning must be our first priority. We must invest in professional development, and we are worried that the current framework does not reflect that. What happens when we have an outbreak or we return to a remote learning environment that has not improved because we have not invested in it? While this framework has some strong ideas, parents are concerned about the feasibility and the fidelity of this plan. Unless there's more that we're not seeing, why do we need to follow a self-imposed deadline of 6 weeks to implement hybrid learning? How can we complete all the things that are needed just to return to the building with a budget-neutral plan? How can we repair the harm without additional counselors or SEL staff? While classrooms are at 50% capacity, 100% of the student population still have critical needs. Why can't we start off with remote learning, like District U46, until there's proof we can do this right?
Mr. Shi, you have
One of the
30
large-
seconds.
One of the largest points of anxiety is the hygiene and sanitization. It cannot be said enough that parents just don't trust that schools that were not clean before the pandemic will be safe and clean now. The A word, error mark, does not make parents feel ready to send their kids back to school. While I'm here, I just want to point out that all schools with SROs will be at 50% capacity. This seems like the opportunity to invest in other needed resources such as counselors and nurses. I want to end by quoting a parent. We have a unique opportunity to reimagine education with children and young people at its center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shi. Mr. President, we'll proceed with speaker number 3, please. Mary Hughes.
I have speaker number 3 on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Hughes?
Hello. Hi. Hello, Board President Belvay, CPS board members, and Dr. Jackson. My name is Mary Hughes, and I'm the Special Ed Parent Liaison with Raise Your Hand. Dr. Jackson, I was thrilled when you and Dr. Jones shared at the February ODLSS PAC meeting that you were working on increasing high school options for students with disabilities. I'm hoping my current concern is unwarranted, but other than Mr. Howard telling me he had changed positions in CPS, I haven't heard back from anyone regarding my request for information on this matter. So just in case, I want to again raise the subject of CPS high school application process and how for the past 3 years, students with IEPs were denied access to many programs if in their 7th grade year, they failed to attain, among other things, a combined math and reading and WEA score of 48 and above, and attendance percentile anywhere between 85 and 93%, and various GPA cup scores. Many students with IEPs were wrongly excluded from certain magnet high schools and CTE programs that offer things like culinary arts, animal science, horticulture, game programming, and web design, automotive technology, cosmetology, dance, and music. Imagine I am a 7th grader with an IEP who has breakout computer skills, okay grades, and autism, but I missed a month of school due to bullying and anxiety. In 8th grade, I cannot even apply to Curie's gaming program. Or I am an 8th grader with an IEP who loves fashion and art, gets A's and B's, gets scores below that combined 48 math and reading and WEA score in my 7th grade year. I can
Ms.
apply
Hughes,
to the
you have 30
cosmetology
seconds.
program at Chicago Vocational, but preference for acceptance into the program will be given to those students who score above the test score threshold, effectively excluding me from the dream program that could lead to employment immediately upon graduation from high school. To be clear, I'm not talking about throwing a student with a disability into a program in which they would likely fail. I'm talking about providing appropriate opportunity for access to application and acceptance based on IEP team decisions to deny students access to opportunity based on metrics related to their disability is discriminatory and an ADA violation. I respectfully request a chance to learn if any changes made to the GO CPS eligibility and acceptance criteria so CPS can resolve any possible existing inequities prior to its rollout in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Our next speaker, Mr. President, will be speaker number 15, Nikita Brar.
Transferring speaker number 15.
Thank you. Ms. Brar, please proceed.
My name is Nikita Barr. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Chicago United for Equity, where I advocate for government transformation that results in a city that is responsive and accountable to communities of color. I'm a commissioner on the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, a former educator, and a mom to an incoming CPS student. But I speak to you today in a role that I took last year to lead the mayor's transition committee on education. I prepared the statement along with my co-chair Sylvia Fuente, though she was unable to join us in person today. In our work, we engaged transition committee members and hundreds of Chicagoans last year, guided by a focus on ending racial disparities. And their resulting report calls for us to, quote, transform discipline in all school types and replace police presence with restorative justice, social emotional learning, and transition support. This recommendation was important enough to be highlighted as a key finding in Sylvia's speech on the eve of the mayor's inauguration. And the mayor-elect affirmed this recommendation. 1 year later, we are calling for this recommendation to be heeded by terminating the contract between Chicago Public Schools and Chicago Police Department. The letter submitted today is signed by 20 members of the transition committee, who include nonprofit leaders, philanthropists, educators, and statewide education leaders. fuel of false conflict about young men trying to navigate their way through gang territories, but also of young women being catcalled and harassed by the police who are supposed to be keeping them safe. We owe all of our students real safety.
Ms.
and we
Brower,
know
you have
that there are
30
ways to
seconds.
get there. Recently, former school leaders Liz Dozier and Cristina Pasiones Zayas shared their approaches to building safe school communities in the Sun-Times and Tribune. Their work at Fenger and Clemente show us that it's possible to transform schools by working with neighbors, church leaders, counselors, and mentors to build real safety, the kind that keeps boys safe walking home from school and girls safe walking into them. In closing, I ask that we draw inspiration from our young people. They are calling on us as adults to reimagine the world we are leaving them, and we owe them a future as bold and full of possibility as they are. I urge you to vote to end the police contract and build real safety in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, our next speaker will be speaker number 4, Ariel Johnson.
Transferring speaker number 4.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson?
Every year.
Hello, Ms. Johnson, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, you can proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Ariel Johnson. I am the Chief of Staff at the Illinois Network of Charter Schools. I'm here today to share the charter community's support for the initial reopening framework that CPS released last Friday. We believe the district's preliminary reopening plan puts the needs of students, families, and communities first as our city response to this unprecedented crisis. In the communities charter serve, the needs of families and students are continually evolving due to the physical and emotional trauma of COVID-19. Many parents are balancing the need for childcare so they can work to support their families while wanting to keep their children safe from a virus that has wreaked havoc through the most underserved communities in the city. Some families are facing layoffs, unpredictable work schedules, and we know that access to technology at home, social and emotional support, and enrichment opportunities to ensure students are growing are varied. As a public school system, we need to be able to support each and every family and child in Chicago. It is our responsibility and one the charter community has always taken very seriously. This is why we believe moving forward with a hybrid model that prioritizes the health and safety of students and staff, but also provides the benefits of in-person and remote learning, allows educators the opportunity to work directly with families to provide the education and the services necessary to support students and meet their individual needs. We want to empower educators to be nimble and responsive in today's environment as new data on the public health crisis emerges. The charter school community's mission has always been to deliver high-quality education to its students. We are committed to using the flexibility of the charter model to provide education that allows educators to innovate and tailor services to different
Ms.
needs of
Johnson, you
children
have 30
while
seconds.
adhering to strict health protocols. Now more than ever, a one-size-fits-all approach to education does not work for our children. It didn't work before the pandemic and does not work now. At INCS, we look forward to our continued collaboration with the district, member schools, communities, and families to safely provide the education and resources students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, our next speaker will be speaker number 5, Yvonne Olea.
Transferring speaker number 5.
Thank you. Ms. Olea?
Hello?
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. President and members of the Board of Education. My name is Yvonne Olea, and my son's name is Manny Tenchi. He goes to Royal Middle School, a charter school on the west side. I'm here to speak today on how schools can best support parents during e-learning and in-person instruction this fall. Royal did an amazing job in the spring in such short notice, and it's a great example of how schools can work with families to support students during this unprecedented time. What really impacted me the most was how amazing the teachers at Royal were when it came to the students' education. The teachers were focused on making sure every child understood the lesson. They provided laptops for each scholar and worked close with families that struggled in some areas. During e-learning, my son struggled a bit to stay focused because of how long he was staring at the screen. He would take breaks, but that would disrupt his routine, which would then make him unfocused. I enjoyed e-learning because I could see what my son was learning and help him when he struggled. The teachers he had were always available, and if he had questions, they would answer quickly. And that is important so scholars are not afraid to ask questions when they are confused. Right now, I'm receiving emails of updates about the school plan for the fall. I personally prefer in-person instruction because as a parent, I do not have all the answers. If scholars are to go back in person school this fall, as a parent, I would appreciate it if we could see a video of what the classroom will look like and what procedures will be done throughout the day to make sure everything is sanitary and safe. If the schools become extra sanitary and take all precautions, then I would feel safe sending my son to school. As a parent, I appreciate the help out of the educators.
Ms.
as well
Olea,
as
you have
those
30 seconds. You have 30 seconds. Yes, please proceed. You have 30 seconds.
As a parent, I appreciate how thoughtful the educators at Roe have been during this crisis to ensure students and families are safe. As well supported, it's been a challenging time, and I know how much extra work and hours it's been on school staff. Your efforts are so appreciated. I also want to thank the Board of Education, Chicago Public Schools staff for your continued leadership and support of students. And families across the city, you are appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we'll proceed with speaker number 6, Garland Thomas McDavid, please.
I have speaker number 6 on the line.
Thank you. Mr. McDavid, please proceed.
Greetings, Dr. Jackson, board, and members of our community. I am Dr. Garland Thomas McDavid, CEO of North Mondale College Prep. I am the proud mom of a 1st and 8th grader in CPS, and believe it or not, of a CPS teacher through Teach for America. I am here today as an advocate for children, especially those who depend on school to create a path to a promising future. We find ourselves in unprecedented circumstances. No one could have predicted that we'd be where we are today. It is imperative that we think and act as partners who all want schools that are safe for teachers, staff, and students. We are on the same side of the table, facing an overwhelming challenge, and we need to be collaborative, not combative. For the past 2 months, I've participated in a task force for reopening with the Illinois Network of Charter Schools. Multiple experts presented solutions being used nationally and abroad to aid in considering every angle of this critical list. Our subcommittee on building operations recommends a hybrid model for learning, which best balances safety and acknowledges the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on Black and Brown children, as well as the far-reaching implications of lost academic engagement. There is no perfect solution to this very complex problem. Still, it is very imperative that we move forward. As a parent, I am behind CPS's plan because it was created to prioritize the safety of my sons and their teachers. We are in a crisis. It won't be easy. Nothing will be ideal, but we have to commit to making this work. Despite the incredible efforts.
Ms. McDavid, you have 30 seconds.
And internet access in partnership with schools, engagement data from the remote model was lowest in our most fragile communities, proving to be a disservice to our students who need us for so much more. It breaks my heart to think about the abuse, food insecurity, and violence being multiplied while students are absent from direct instruction and services. Chicago schools are safe havens of love, learning, affirmation, food, and social and emotional support that is not standard in every home. While I understand that it is scary, we have a responsibility to open in service to our families. It will take ongoing creativity and innovation to do this carefully. Our children are worth it, and they are counting on us not to acquiesce to politics, models, and decisions that will leave them behind permanently. My heart goes out to every leader, team member, teacher, and parent who is pressing forward despite the uncertainty in what lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDavid. Our next speaker is speaker number 7, Latrice Franklin.
I have speaker number 7 on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Franklin?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you for allowing me a moment to speak. My name is Latrice Franklin, and I am the principal of Lawrence Hunter Perkins campus located on the southwest side of the city. We are a level 1+ school serving over 480 K through 8th grade scholars. 95% of our scholars are Black and over 80% are low income. The demand for our school is quite high. We have hundreds of families on our wait list, and we have a lottery every year. I have been with the Learn family for over 9 years, and I wanted to take this opportunity to share my personal experience. Learn is a Black-led institution with a Black leadership team. As a Black woman serving an overwhelmingly Black community, this is a very personal quest for me. I am proud to work alongside colleagues who share my passion and vision and who have a deep understanding of what is at stake. I know that we are literally saving lives. Learn serves Chicago's hardest hit communities. Our families are plagued by COVID, racial injustices, and violence. I personally reside in the Calumet Heights neighborhood with my husband, who is a policeman, and our 2 young boys. Our home is between 2 of our campuses, and just Monday, we were notified that school-age children, many of which are the same age that we serve, were carjacking and robbing people at gunpoint. This is one of many of the examples of why children in these areas desperately need Learn. We lean into these challenges because we know that learning is one of the best possible choices for helping these families break the cycle of poverty through education. We nurture our scholars and alumni following their journey as they attend some of the best high schools in cities. Our alumni matriculate to Westinghouse, Whitney Young.
Ms. Franklin, you have 30 seconds.
They have graduated from places such as the University of Chicago, Spelman College, University of Illinois, and we are extremely proud of their accomplishments. This is an uncertain time for all of us, and Learn is taking the time to survey our families and staff to determine when we can reopen schools safely. But we do know that the students are best served in the class. As Learn approaches its renewal this fall, I hope that you will vote to allow me and my colleagues to continue to be good partners to CPS, making sure that Chicago's most vulnerable public school children have the support they need to reach their full potential. I appreciate your time and I thank you for your service on this board.
Thank you, Ms. Franklin. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we'll proceed with speaker number 8, please. Brittany Gomez.
I have speaker number 8 on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Gomez?
Yes.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Hello, my name is Brittany Gomez. I am a parent to a first grader at Grissom Elementary. Grissom is a fine arts school on the far south side, yet art is on a cart. There's no band, no library. We lack technology, so that means no computer lab. Only a couple of carts of Chromebooks that the whole school has to share, in which many are falling apart and breaking. We are also labeled an options for knowledge school, and yet we barely have room for neighborhood children, many of which are leaving so they could get a better education with a smaller class size and more programming. When my child started kindergarten last year, there was 34 children in her class. Before the mid-year, 2 transferred out with more wanting to follow suit. Many of us are not in that position to do so. So here I am fighting for a better quality of education and equitable education. We only have one mobile that was tested positive for mold. A mobile is supposed to be temporary, and yet ours is 21 years old or so. It had mushrooms growing out of it last year, with visible signs of water damage inside. It flooded twice while my child was in preschool during school hours, I'll add. My child received speech therapy services in a room that's shared with a nurse, a counselor, a bilingual teacher, a speech pathologist, and an occupational therapist. It was a very nice experience during her IEP meetings, having children and people come in and out to see the counselor and nurse. Talk about no privacy. It was truly a violation. I can only imagine how our
Ms. Gomez, you have 30 seconds.
I could only imagine how our English language learners feel every day when they're trying to learn with so many distractions in which they have no classroom on days of these meetings. Does the education and privacy of these children not matter? And speaking of the subject of conditions, our school shares a 3-in-1 gym, lunchroom, and auditorium. It is small, poorly lit with no AC. During the warm months, it is unbearable. During our long winter months, our children are stuck inside all day inside these overcrowded classrooms because there is no space to have recess. We are asking that you invest in our school and give us an annex that we deserve. We have space for it. When will we have a resolution? It's already been 2 years that we have been coming to board meetings. What will it take? It has been tiring and discouraging that our children do not matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Gomez. We have an additional speaker on Grissom, speaker number 11, Mr. President, Melissa Ramirez.
Transferring speaker number 11.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez?
Yes.
Please proceed. Ms. Ramirez?
Yes.
You can proceed.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can proceed with your comments.
Hi, my name is Melissa Ramirez, and I was a student of CPS from kindergarten through high school. I am a product of the CPS and currently a teacher for Chicago Public Schools. It is my honor to give back to the district all of the great experiences that I have received. I am currently disheartened by the state of my school, Grissom Elementary. Grissom is this beautiful school with a wonderful culture, with great children and involved parents. We currently have no space in our school. Because there's no space, our kindergarten and pre-K have been moved to St. Columba Church. This church is 1.3 miles away from our school and a 27-minute walk. Our 3, 4, and 5-year-old children need to walk 27 minutes to get an education. And when it's raining or snowing in inclement weather, is this what we want for our kids? What's going to be done? When are we going to get a building? The parents are telling me that they've been advocating for 2 years at least to get another building, an addition built. We have the space for it, but it's not being built. It seems like they're getting the runaround. We are on the far south side. We're on the border of Indiana and Burnham, Illinois. It feels as if we are so far south that we are just forgotten about. I believe our current mission is creating equity, and I want to see equity in this school for our children. We're supposed to be, as Brittany Gomez mentioned, we're
Ms. Ramirez, you have 30 seconds.
magnet school, and we're not able to accept the students on the wait list. We're feeling as if there's discrimination with our EL and DL population. Those students do not have a classroom to learn in. 2 teachers are sharing a room with DL students with a divider, and next school year it's expected to be 3 DL classrooms in 1 classroom with a divider. Our speakers have no space to teach the kids or give them their one-on-one services. I am not able to provide a small group setting for my students or a low distraction setting for my students. We have, this last school year, I had 45 children in a class. My smaller class was 40 children in a class. They cannot learn that way. We want equitable access to education for our students. This has been going on for over 20 years because that's Accountable has been there for 21 years. The parents tell me they currently have a petition going with over 400 signatures in less than 48 hours. At least 30 emails have been sent to the Board of Education through the online inquiry form from our parents, and they tell me they have not received a response yet. Can we get maybe a more private meeting? What can we do for our school? We can do better. How can we make this better for our children?
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we'll continue with the speakers list. Speaker number 9, Timothy Noonan.
Transferring speaker number 9.
Thank you. Mr. Noonan,
Yes.
please proceed.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. We find ourselves in very interesting times, as we all know. Yet with chaos comes opportunity. Kellogg Elementary students and parents have spoken over the last year for the need of an addition to a neglected, high-performing school. Kellogg has been overlooked for many years with no substantial investment. Now is the opportunity to build this addition, as was done with Palmer Elementary. Our gym is a kitchen, lunchroom, classroom, and auditorium. Lunches are being prepared in the same room while gym class is in session. There should be a dedicated cafeteria and kitchen, and not just a closet like we have now. Kellogg's mobile classrooms are suffering with age and elements. The classrooms are in desperate need to be replaced. An addition would accomplish this. Kellogg is not ADA compliant and therefore is not an option for children with special abilities. Kellogg has a high percent of diverse learners while maintaining high growth rates. Kellogg is a premier local public elementary school, ranked in the top 25. Kellogg educates all its children in all our boundaries, regardless of ability. Our poverty rate, while below the district average, is high for the neighborhood. Kellogg has a very active LLC and PTA. Parents are invested. Kellogg has produced many successful alumni and are proud of their Kellogg roots. Kellogg is small and truly loved. We can take advantage of our size since we are small. Kellogg could be an incubator of ideas that reflect our new normal, such as open classrooms.
Mr. Noonan, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Such as open plan classrooms with flexible spaces. This would ensure social distancing during the time of COVID and then be configured into whatever the classroom requires. We don't want to lose this opportunity. Kellogg is a safe, solid, responsible investment that will pay dividends for another 80 plus years. CPS would be investing in a high-performing neighborhood school with strong community, excellent growth rates, and demonstrated need. I urge the Chicago Board of Education to appropriate the funds for K-Star Elementary to build the addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we'll proceed with speaker number 10, Lisa Dress.
Transferring speaker number 10.
Thank you. Ms. Dress?
Good morning. My name is Lisa Druff. The Joint Civic Committee of Italian Americans Columbus Day Coalition, which consists of community leaders from the African American, Hispanic, Filipino, Jewish, Irish, and Polish communities, and Alderman Burnett, Irvin, Hopkins, Lopez, Napolitano, Laboyris, Rosado, Talafiero, Thompson, and Villegas, is bringing to a point of order that this board has yet to acknowledge or respond to a letter submitted on March 4th questioning how and why the Board of Education has usurped Columbus Day. Right now, there's nothing more important than the COVID-19 virus and the health and well-being of the residents of the city of Chicago and the school children of the Chicago Public Schools. While we stand together to fight this pandemic, our coalition remains strong and steadfast to reverse the Chicago Board of Education's decision. We look forward to celebrating annually with CPS Indigenous Peoples Day, the last Monday of September, the day that in 2017, the state signed into law the celebration of this holiday. And we look forward to celebrating Columbus Day with CPS on the second Monday in October. We also look forward to this board responding to our letter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Struss. We'll continue, Mr. President, with speaker number 12, Angela Alvarez.
I have speaker number 12 on the line.
Thank you.
Election address inequality.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Hi.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Angel Alvarez from Northwestern University. I would like to address inequality in 3 different domains at CPS. First, CPS does not adequately address the impact of the current pandemic on learning and instruction. I warn CPS officials of the seriousness of the pandemic that would result in an extended school shutdown and the need to develop contingencies for online instruction. The lack of preparation has resulted in students receiving varying quality of instruction based on the location of their school. Disparities in education are not new, but they're exacerbated by the pandemic and are felt strongest by students with disabilities. Schools provide varying levels of instructional quality, with students at more affluent schools receiving enrichment opportunities that are prohibited at other schools. Keeping students segregated in underperforming schools is less justifiable with distance learning. Moreover, the decision to promote students without regard to their level of proficiency denies them the opportunity to learn. Parents should be given the opportunity to place children in grade appropriate classrooms that are reflective of their documented performance, but they have the opportunity to learn and not fall behind. This is in the best interest of all students. Finally, I'll be sending my preliminary report on inequity and aggressive discipline by CPS schools with recommendations for consideration and implementation. I find distinct differences in the utilization of police and out-school suspensions in schools with marginalized students. Data on many schools, including charter, are missing that preventing accountability. In schools that were analyzed, aggressive discipline was predicted of schools with high populations of Black and Latinx students, students with low-income families, and schools with multiple long-standing vacancies in local school councils. And the vacancies are likely a result of the CPS Office of LSU.
Mr. Alvarez, you have 30 seconds.
Principals that compliance with the law to fill vacancies is optional. Keeping these vacants allows principals to escape accountability. In my local school, Dowdy has 3 parent LSU vacancies. Sadly, the greatest disparity in aggressive discipline is observed in our elementary schools. The analysis also reveals aggressive discipline can vary significantly among schools with the same student demographic, suggesting that having underserved students does not require aggressive discipline to be successful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we'll proceed with speaker 13, Tamara Snyder.
I have speaker 13 on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Tamara Snyder. I stand before you today as the Regional Organizing Director for Stand for Children and a former CPS parent and LSC president. I stand before you as a Chicago resident who has lived on the South Side and witnessed the shooting while on my way to visit a CPS school. I stand before you as a proud single Black mother who is also a COVID-19 survivor, and while self-isolating and very ill, I managed to parent my high school daughter while helping her with her homework as we were separated by a door. This work is personal to me. I'm here today to speak about CPS's plans to reopen schools in the fall. This summer, community-based organizations could host family-focused groups that use CPS's facilitation guide to get input from parents. STAND hosted 7 focus groups for our Southside parent members. Here are some of the things that we learned. Parents want to keep their children healthy. Parents had a variety of experiences with remote learning. Some had technology issues, some had trouble keeping their children engaged, while some had no worries at all. Parents want social emotional learning support for their families in schools, and parents demand a seat at the table of equity to see themselves as partners in education. Additionally, STAND also commissioned a poll of CPS parents because we wanted to make sure their voices are heard. The poll was conducted for 1 week through July 14th. We learned from the poll that right now, parents' opinions align largely with CPS draft.
Ms.
plan,
Snyder, you
that
have 30
parents
seconds.
want some form of remote learning to continue. They want schools to be clean and safe, and they want their children to return to those crucial interactions with both teachers and their peers. Parents are torn between hybrid or fully remote models. 35% support a hybrid approach, 40% support a full remote approach, but just 19% support full reopening. Parents are most concerned about keeping their children's education on track. We asked parents which of the state guidelines for reopening were most important to them. At the top of their list was increased school-wide cleaning and disinfecting. Second was conducting symptom screenings and temperature checks. Third was appropriate PPE, including face masks. And 4 was prohibiting gatherings of 50 or more, followed by physical distancing as much as possible. Our polling memo is available on our website at stand.org/Illinois. Thank you to the board for listening to the parents.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Mr. President, and our last speaker from the speakers list is speaker 14, please, Natasha Carlson.
I have speaker 14 on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Carlson?
This is,
Yes, can you please proceed?
yeah,
Thank
good
you.
morning. My name is Natasha Carlson, a special education teacher entering my 11th year in CPS, a kindergarten through 3rd grade separate class teacher. But I am not only a teacher in this district, as the system forces me to also be a special education advocate. I am the co-chair of the CTU Special Education Committee, executive board member, and bargaining team member. We have and will continue to sustain and support our members since our district in ODLSS, or irregardless of who is appointed in leadership, continues to exhibit an action that they have not sought to support our educators or our students with disabilities. I am speaking today not only on the behalf of myself and my own students, but representative of the thousands of special education teachers, clinicians, paraprofessionals that work in our district that are about to be used as guinea pigs and put in the lives where their lives are in jeopardy. The preliminary framework is evident of the lack of consideration or care for our populations and our complex needs as workers, or how we fulfill our legal obligations. Our committee for the Chicago Teachers Union scrambled, created, and administered a survey over the last 4 days from our membership, and within that time, we've had over 250 respondents. Our respondents included pre-K, elementary, high school clinicians, and itinerant teachers, as well as CPS paraprofessionals. This survey of feedback is representative of over 107 elementary schools, 29 high schools, and all clinician categories except for audiologists and physical therapists. Feedback is what is said to be important with this
Ms. Carlson, you have 30 seconds.
framework. Over the 267 respondents, 0 believe this should be in effect for the first day. Only 10% were undecided, with the remaining 90% of respondents not feeling safe in any way to return to the school. This plan perpetuates chaos and confusion in the schools as fluff words and platitudes only produce further questions and concerns and fails to materialize the most basic requirement of safety, let alone providing safe. I urge you as board members to ensure that you are representing our communities and our students and our educators and not putting us in the opportunity where lives will be lost. You as board members have the ability to ensure that we are planning for remote learning in the fall, and how do we improve that? Next week's meeting should be focused on how we improve remote learning, because safety cannot be guaranteed and lives will be lost before we take action.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Carlson. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, we're going to go back to reaching out to Chris Bayron, please. Charter Division Chair, CTUX.
Yes, transferring Chris Barron,
Thank
Charter
you.
Division Chair, CTU.
Thank you. Mr. Bayron? Mr. Bayron?
Hello,
Yes,
Ron?
thank you. You're on the line. Can you please proceed?
Great, I can't hear very well, but
Can you-
I want to thank the board members, Chair Del Valle, Dr. Jackson, and especially the staff who worked hard to reconnect me. I appreciate it. I'm the leader of the charter division for the CTU, and I am really concerned that we're dealing with some life and death issues. I'm just going to speak to the charter sector right now. The boards of the charter schools are mostly non-educators. Most of them should not be in charge of public educational institutions, much less the life and death of our members, our students, their families. So here are some of the concerns. We have charter operators as recently as last week telling us they wanted to reopen fully in person with full-size classes. Most of the operators are not negotiating with us, even though they're legally obligated to, so we have no idea what their plan is. We have knowledge of non-union charters where employees were told to report for full-size classes, in-person learning in the middle of August, or they will be fired. This board needs to exercise some oversight at CICS. They are planning on laying off 10% of the workforce at the schools that we represent. While CICS's overall budget is up, I think, close to $400,000 for this year. They're laying off mostly black educators, like 80% black educators. We know where the system has lost black educators the educators that look like our students. And this board, I think, more than previous boards, recognizes how critical that is. I want to bring to your attention one of our schools, Monmouth State, and they brought back members without negotiating with us, but they had class size limits. They have class size limits of 10. There are only 83 kids in the building, so that's like 17% of capacity. It's much more, more restrictive guidelines than the one that CPS has put out. But it is a nightmare. The teachers spend most of their time directing kids to wash their hands, to sit in their place. There's very little learning is happening. And the social component is just not there when you're sitting, you're 5 and you're divided by plexiglass from the kid next to you and constantly being reminded to wear a mask. That 7th graders just getting up and walking out saying, this is not fun. Kids having panic attacks. There was a 4-year-old who was, started coughing. So he was put in the isolation room for like 2 or 3 hours. 4-year-old, welcome to school, sit in the room, be terrified you have, a virus. I'll just give you one other anecdote. A teacher came to work, was scanned, the person's forehead was scanned, and too hot. They were put by an air conditioner, right? Potentially spreading germs around. And then, the temperature cools down, but here, what are we going to do when, the teacher comes and they can't report for duty? You can't have a set of instant leave. You combine the classrooms. It's really the kids are not an educational environment. It's causing extreme anxiety. We have to reopen remotely. I was difficulty getting on the call because I was out in this caravan of 400 cars stretching over 2 miles. Like the members of the CTU, we know our students, we know how to keep them safe. We are nurses, social workers, teachers. We really need to open remotely until it's safe. And that also means the charters that are scheduled to come back before CPS. We should all come back remotely. No charters should come back in person until CPS and the charters have agreed to the guidelines that the CTU has put out. And that means that virus levels are down low enough that it's safe for us to come back. This is life and death right here. This board has heard me come and give testimony many times, and I appreciate hearing it, but it's time to act. And I implore you to do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, I would like to note on behalf of Jesse Sharkey, we had some connectivity issues, but he will be sending his remarks to us, and we'll forward those remarks to the board members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes public participation, Mr. President.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments at this point? If not, we'll move on to the presentation. Dr. Jackson, you want to begin?
Okay, thank you, President Del Valle. We're going to jump into a detailed presentation regarding our reopening framework. First, before we do that, I do want to signal that we will have Shannon Heston talk about student engagement data during remote learning per the board's request. we want to make sure that both the board and the public are updated on the end of the year activities. Before we jump into that, I do just want to say, reiterate the points that I made in my opening remarks, which is that we will reopen schools in a safe and responsible way, and that we feel proud of the preliminary framework that we're going to talk about today, as we know that we have put forth many different options that for a variety of parents, and really try to put together something where people can see themselves and their family needs reflected. As you heard from the speakers today, there are a lot of diverse views on what this should look like. And we recognize that while we know very little about COVID and things are changing every single day, the one thing that we do know is that COVID will be with us for a while, and that we have a responsibility to figure out how to do school in this environment. We're going to talk about our improvements to remote learning, our improvements to ensure that our students are safe, and the protocols that we will have in place. You will hear from senior leaders covering that in just a second. Before we transition, I want to ask Shannon to just come up and provide a high-level overview that I think provides a little framing for this discussion today. We're going to share engagement data for the end of the school year. You may recall we gave you a preview, I believe in May or June, but this presentation today includes everything that happened during our remote learning phase. So Shannon.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, and thank you for this opportunity to sort of reflect on how we are learning.
Yeah, a little louder.
A little louder. Okay.
Thank you.
Through the mask, so I'll be really loud if I can. So student contact and engagement during remote learning is presented here for the entire period of remote learning, but we're going to focus on the period that's happened since we engaged with you last. First, we wanted to talk about our methodology. You've seen most of this before. It remains the same, with the exception of we did add some charter school data that we were able to gather from charters and options and contract schools when they were able to self-report. We also are carrying through with our methodology in terms of using Google to monitor digital tools and digital engagement, right? Rather than something like Zoom or something like some of the other platforms. And so that's the lens that we're looking at. And of course, we have to look at whether or not they logged in. So we can only track their usage if they logged into Google before they engaged. We're excluding pre-K and kindergarten where it makes sense, as we did last time. And student contact is self-reported by schools. We wanted to describe the metrics that we're going to go through today. First of all, we brought a special lens today to digital access to focus on the children that we were unable to contact and try to bring some more diligence to the way that we determined which students we were entirely unable to contact. So in this case, we're presenting a student as unable to contact only if not only did a school designate that they were unable to contact them, but also we didn't see them in our Google data and they weren't issued a grade. Because if they were issued a grade, clearly they were engaged in learning in some way. And if they were engaged with Google, clearly we are contacting them. Finally, students using Google Meet or Classrooms, that definition remains the same. Throughout this presentation, though, you're going to see that we kind of upped the ante a little bit. Last time we talked about students that engaged with Google at least once a week. This time we're going to talk about students that engaged at least 3 days per week. And that metric includes a student that engaged at least 3 days per week specifically, rather than 3 times over the course of, let's say, a day, right? So they could be really diligent and join all their 9 period classes in high school for 1 day and still wouldn't get credit for that. They have to engage consistently over the week. Next, we are able to look at final grades during this presentation where we weren't last time. You remember that we looked at assignment level grades last time. Now we have the final grades to share. And this metric represents the core course grades. So reading, math, science, and social science. And high school and elementary, the grading policies are a little bit different. And the way that we look at this is a little bit different too. In high school, we're looking at the grades actually given because you could get multiple grades in multiple core courses. You could say take AP English and creative writing. And so we look at the number of grades. For elementary school, we're counting the number of students. So the denominator is going to look a little bit different. We didn't want to confuse you there. Finally, students contacted. This remains the same. This is self-reported, and we don't add any other logic like self-correct for the student was self-reported by schools as not contacted, but maybe they show up in our Google data. We didn't include that. If the school said they didn't contact them, then we just reflect it here. So key takeaways, we focus this on grades because it's new and we think you may be interested. The key takeaways here are, first of all, that high school students and elementary school students received more A's this year versus last year. They also, and high school students all received fewer non-passing grades. For elementary school students, you'll see that the number of incompletes has actually gone up. But again, if you'll recall from the grading policy, even an incomplete in elementary school, that student will still be promoted to the next grade. The other piece of the key takeaways here is that the majority of students are recorded as having contact with their schools on a weekly basis. So we want to, of course, use this data to continuously improve our metrics and our learning here. And so some of the things that we're actually acting on as a result of this data, first of all, we're transitioning to Google Suites for next year so that we see a full picture of engagement and we don't have to caveat that some students may have not used Google and we're not seeing them in this data. Second, as you know, we're enhancing at-home learning requirements and setting clear expectations with ISB guidance, including ensuring that students are participating a minimum of 5 hours per day with instruction, and adjusting our attendance model. And we'll see that in a minute. Continuing to address the digital divide, as you know, we're in an ongoing way, addressing the digital divide by sharing computing devices, by distributing MiFi units, and through the Chicago Connected initiative, getting students connected if they're especially needy. Our next steps, of course, are to provide additional details on these new learning expectations, and we'll continue to provide updates. We wanted to start with an overall look at the data across metrics. And so you'll see if I read left to right here, starting with contact, we see that 85% of students are contacted each week on average. And that again is self-reported by schools. The next metric is a new one. The next metric shows that 52.5% of students on any given day engaged through a Google tool if that day was an instructional day. So for us, this almost represents like an approximation of attendance if we think about remote learning. And of course, there are a lot of caveats that go with a number like this, right? A, they could not be using Google tools. And B, they may not even have been offered a class on that particular day if the remote learning guidance hadn't been issued yet. So there are a lot of things that go with this, but it gets us started on talking about what does attendance look like for next year. The final kind of graphic is year-over-year grade comparison. And this shows, and you may not be able to see it too well, but this shows the number of, on the high school side, the number of, and that's on the right, A's, B's, C's, and D's given versus the number of F's and incompletes, or this year, the number of passes and incompletes. So you can see that the number of passes and A's, B's, C's, or D's, letter grades given for high school students is actually higher than last year. And then for elementary school students, you can see that incomplete number there. We wanted to focus on digital pathway status as well, because we know that you're interested in trying to monitor and make sure that these folks have access, as are we. So if we look at this graph, this actually shows, this will, if you add all the bars together, add up to 100, which is why you see such low numbers for the non-digital, unable to make contact and missing data percentages over here. You can see that the vast majority of students are in the digital category. The district overall is on the far left, and then it goes into the elementary school and high school designations, right? You can see again that because we've applied this logic where if you engage with this over Google, we put you into the digital category, even if a school initially when remote learning started may have put you into the unable to contact category. We see the vast majority of students in our digital category. And then non-digital is lower, and you can see if you look at the graphic, the percentage of the district that's in that category, and then above it is the number of students that are in that category, just to make sure that you get the sense. Then as we move toward the right, unable to make contact, you can see that these numbers are quite low. Of course, any student that falls into this category is too many. This means that we really haven't been able to contact this student throughout the period of remote learning. But you can see that the numbers are fairly low in this category versus the others. Missing data, I know we got a lot of questions about this last time. Missing data is the school did not designate a student as digital, non-digital, or unable to make contact. We just don't have that information from them. We have the same information and asked for the same information for charters. And we can see that the numbers remain, the vast majority are in the digital category. And non-digital is about the same. And then there are more missing data pieces. I will say that some charters chose, as is their right, not to share this data. So that makes up some of the missing data that's larger than the district schools. So now we move toward grades. We're going to start with just an overview of the grading policy because it is very different than it has ever been in the past, right? So first of all, students could not receive a grade that was lower than their third quarter grade during remote learning, right? And so if they could maintain or improve their letter grade, or students could maintain or improve their letter grades and earn a pass or earn an incomplete. For elementary and high school, and you'll see throughout this presentation that we've separated elementary and high school, it's because the grading policies are different and we didn't want to cause confusion. For elementary school, students are being promoted to the next grade regardless of the final grade they received. And just to remember, elementary final grades are cumulative of all 4 quarters. So that's distinct from high school, where high schools are given semester grades, right? So elementary school students completing paper packets could receive a final letter grade, even if they were only able to receive a pass or an incomplete on that paper packet, because we could reference their grade before remote learning started, if that makes sense. For high school, again, high school students are on a semester level, so we're showing semester grades here. Here, high school students completing paper packets could receive a pass, which yields course credit and has no impact on a student's GPA, meaning that a student would still be on track to graduate. If a high school student did not engage, they received an incomplete, whereas an F negatively impacts a student's GPA and incomplete does not. And of course, students are given the opportunity to make up that credit through credit recovery. So after that kind of breakdown of the different policies, you can of course see that incompletes appear this year where they had not before, right? We just had the letter grades and a very small percentage of incompletes there at the top for school year 2018-2019 on the left. These grades presented, it's a sample, it's representative. These are reading and math. We've got social science and science in the appendix of this presentation if you'd like to take a look at it. But basically, you can see that the percentage of A's given across every racial demographic and here and across every core course do go up. And if we compare F's to incompletes, the percentage of incompletes actually also goes down. So fewer incompletes were given than F's last year and more A's were given than, more A's were given this year than last year. And this is true across the core courses, including science and social science. We're also looking at a racial breakdown, and those same trends that I just pointed out are stay true in the racial breakdown, right? So more A's were given, fewer incompletes than F's were given this year versus last year across race. In the racial breakdown for math, you can see the same trends. Finally, the breakdown by learner pathway. So this is the digital, non-digital, unable to contact and missing data. And you can see here that because if a student was given a letter grade, we defaulted to, we were able to contact them and they're not missing data, there are no grades represented in this, in those metrics. The high schoolers that show up as non-digital but receiving a letter grade is a kind of a funny and somewhat misleading metric, right? And you can see the complexity of this metric where the non-digital students were categorized as non-digital by the school, but if they received a grade, then sort of by virtue of our own grading policy, they probably engaged with the digital tool because otherwise they would have received a pass or an incomplete. You can see that the grades are lower for the non-digital categories as well. So now we move to elementary. And for elementary school final grades, you can see that the A's again go up, but that the incompletes are more. And again, these students will still be promoted to the next grade, but there are more incompletes than there were F's last year. This is again for reading and math as a representative sample. They're about the same across core courses. For a racial breakdown, again, these trends remain true. You can see some disparities though between the African American and Latinx and the white, Asian and multiracial and other races students here. And again, math, very similar trends. Now, if we break down by learner pathway here, we can actually see that the non-digital students, because the grading policy is a little bit different, we can see that same trend of elementary school students where the grades do go down for the non-digital learners. And here, because these grades are cumulative and they take into account their previous grades before remote learning was introduced, it is possible that these students were correctly placed into the non-digital category and we're relying on the grades they got before. And so you can again see that those grades are on average lower. Or rather, there were more students that received lower grades, sorry. All right, so we're gonna move into student contact. And student contact, again, you can see that there's a pretty straightforward line across the top right for schools that said they could contact a student. If we did include contact and we included some of these nuanced definitions of, they were contacted digitally and or they received a grade, these numbers would probably go up. This is just the self-reported numbers by school, by week. The same data is presented for charters on the next slide. And you can see that charter schools, and I'm sorry, I failed to mention that graduation is pointed out here. And so if you see the high school drop there, I suspect that some of those folks might be seniors that aren't dialing into their Google Meets after graduation. The next slide represents charters. And we can see that the charter graduation starts on average earlier and of course varies by charter school and campus. So there's no real way to control for that, but they start as early as May 29th. And you can see that data start to dip, especially in high school. On average, this is a variance for charters where the contact numbers are substantially lower, especially as graduation is introduced earlier, right? Now we move on to engagement using Google platforms. And again, we're using a little bit of a higher bar here, 3 or more days per week versus 1 or more days per week, which is what we used last time. So these numbers will look a little bit lower than the ones we shared last time. And here we can see the days, also kind of the days that were special cases pointed out throughout. But we can see that on average, right, for high school and elementary school, we've got a fairly consistent engagement with Google until graduations and the end of the year kind of begin. This is the actual data to show what the previous graph showed. And we're going to show that just because there are so many little teeny points there. So each of these Google graphs are going to be followed by a table just to show you the actual numbers. And again, the top number is the number of students. Bottom number is the percentage of students that engaged for a given week. So students with Google activity by race, ethnicity, the key takeaway here is that there's up to a 34% difference between for example, the white category on their highest engagement day or highest engagement week rather, and the African-American students on their highest engagement week. And so we do see some substantial variance here. And here's the data. You guys to pour over in your free time. Okay. So students with Google activity by priority groups. Here we can see that actually students with IEPs and students in temporary living situations engage less than any single racial group. So this is something we need to work on. And here's that data. And that really concludes our presentation on engagement as a retrospective and to inform really our reopening plan. I'll hand it back over, but I did want to just point you towards an appendix that is pretty expansive here if you'd like to see more we've got a lot that you can pore over. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shannon. And board members, if there are any questions, we can take them at the end of the presentation just to stay on track. I want to thank Shannon and her team for sharpening the methodology that we've been using, of course, with this transition, accurately documenting student engagement, attendance, and teacher engagement was a heavy lift. And our team, I think, did a really great job of doing that. I want to highlight the fact that the grading data does dispel the myth that our grading policy disproportionately impacted students of color, in particular African-American students. I thought that was an important highlight that I really wanted to underscore. And also note that we know that students who don't have access to devices and internet connectivity had a much more difficult time engaging in remote learning, which is why we're putting all of our efforts into the Chicago Connected program, which will allow for 100,000 students to have access to broadband internet connectivity for free over the next 4 years in their home. So I share that because out of this crisis, I think we've done something really good that is going to support remote learning, but also support our students for years to come. And, you know, I've said time and time again, internet connectivity and a device, those things should be as common as textbooks. And so I'm glad to see that the district is moving in that direction. I also want to lift up one of the last slides. We thought it was critically important to disaggregate this data by race, just to see those disparities. And I think we're all disheartened to see the gap between African-American student participation and their white peers. I think that begs for further exploration across the board from the district level all the way down to the classroom level. And some of the changes that Chief McDade will talk about during her presentation will really highlight how we have started to think about that and how we are using this data to make improvements, improvements that help us identify supports that the schools will need and students will need. Is also informing our expectations for teachers, and we'll be sharing more information about that. And it's also going to help inform our learning at home model that's outlined in the framework. It's important to note that all of the work that we do is grounded in the vision and values for Chicago Public Schools. I've talked a lot about the competing demands here. How do we offer a high quality education to students safely given our circumstances? We remain committed to that, and the work that we are doing will help us achieve that goal. To follow through on the promise of equity, which was outlined in our vision, we wanted to prioritize our most vulnerable populations in this plan. That includes our English language learners and our diverse learners. And so we have prioritized that, and we've asked principals to ensure that when space is available, that those students are given priority for in-person instruction because we know it's so valuable. If you transition to slide 6, I want to talk a little bit about the voices of our students and families. You've heard a lot of data today, so I don't want to, overwhelm people. But what I really do want them to know, if you could go back to the green slide, Dave. We've talked to thousands of people to gather input, and we've been promoting our survey since last week, and we've already gotten, as you can see on the screen, thousands of people across various stakeholder groups to weigh in, and we will continue to aggressively push for people to share their information because we think that we will have a stronger plan as a result. A few key highlights. We heard from students that they desire more live interaction with their teachers and their classmates. They feel a lack of connection. And so we're going to be working to ensure that we are strengthening that over time. Dave, you can transition. From our families, we heard that they want to make sure that we have more rigorous health protocols in our schools. You heard that in the data that Stand for Children shared as well. Parents want to see their children back in school, but they are concerned with making sure that the schools are healthy and safe. We also heard that our families do prefer a hybrid model. They want us to open, but they want us to open slowly, and they want us to be intentional about how we do that. And all of our families have said time and time again that they want more transparency. They want to know how we're thinking, how we're making decisions, and they want to know the rationale behind those decisions. And so we've tried to, as much as possible, share our decision-making process, but more importantly, invite people into that process. Now that we have draft guidance that has been shared, I want to encourage people to really take a look at that, but also ground themselves in the guiding principles. The first one being health and wellness. We want to make sure that we have a plan that prioritizes health and wellness and that our students and staff feel safe going back into schools. I also want people to know that we share the same anxiety that they have and that we're not going to do anything that puts our teachers, our students, ourselves in jeopardy. We have to do this in a safe manner, and that's the work that we're engaged in right now. We also know that we have to have high quality learning experiences for our students. You can't focus on one without focusing on the other. If we do that, the students that are most vulnerable, the students that we all say we're concerned about, those are going to be the students who lose out if we don't have a plan in place for ensuring high quality learning experiences across the board. We also heard time and time again that students need more support. It took us a while to get some of those supports off the ground, access to related service providers, et cetera. So I'm happy Latanya will talk a little bit about how we intend to improve our SEL supports, because that was a constant theme through surveys, focus groups, and one-on-one discussions with students and families. We, again, in keeping with that, people want to make sure that the needs of the whole child are met. And this is something that is always a priority, but always a challenge. And the fact that we're working in a completely different environment definitely makes this much more challenging, but we are committed to providing more supports for our staff and students. Finally, people want to make sure that we are looking at the needs of the community and engaging people and engaging our stakeholders. We know that there are a variety of things going on, and we know that there are communities that are disproportionately impacted. These are also the same communities that are still reeling from the murders of George Floyd and others, and also dealing with the racial injustice and violence. And so when you compound all of these things and try to put a plan together, it becomes extremely complex and complicated, but we remain committed to working through that. All in all, we can't do this without fully engaging all of the stakeholders and keeping them informed. We talk about this all the time. I have to say that I've never experienced so many diverse voices around a particular issue than I have experienced trying to solve this issue and this problem. I think that the more we engage our students, parents, and staff, we're going to come together with a plan that everybody understands. And I think that level of collaboration and understanding is going to be critical to ensure that we can safely reopen schools. At this time, I want to turn things over to Chief McDade, who's going to walk us through more details around our reopening framework and focus on what the average day is going to look like for our students as they learn at home and at school, and also what the average day will look like for our teachers. Chief McDade.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. As you stated at the beginning of your remarks, we made a really difficult decision to suspend in-person instruction in March. We knew it was going to be difficult for students, families, educators, and just about anyone who works to support schools. We fundamentally had to change how we educate students and upend our pre-existing systems. But we also took away a lot of lessons from the spring. I won't run through the full gamut, but I wanted to share a few actions we're going to take to ensure students have a high quality education, whether at home or in school. First, we're moving all district managed schools to the Google Education Platform, which Shannon mentioned earlier, to capture student engagement. We saw the problems that we had when the district did not have visibility into other platforms, and we couldn't capture accurately engagement to support students and teachers. This will ensure equity of access and allow the district to focus on our efforts on strengthening our menu of digital resources for schools. Second, all schools will track attendance through Aspen. This will allow the district to spot potential issues with engagement early on and provide interventions and supports for schools. Next slide. Third, we need clear expectations for teacher engagement during remote learning and a method to capture teacher participation. I want to share a little bit of data, preliminary data with you. Some of the data you saw earlier during Shannon's presentation. In elementary school, only 81.6% of teachers logged Google Meet or Google Classroom activity for 3 or more days each week. In high school, only 55.8% of teachers logged Google Meet or Google Classroom activity for 3 or more days the last week of school. In reviewing preliminary student surveys, only 33% of student respondents said they connected with teachers or staff members from their schools daily. 37% of student respondents said they needed more ways to engage with their teacher, and only 37% of parent respondents said a teacher or staff member connected with their student daily. As a result, we will establish clear educator expectations and guidelines for remote learning that ensure accountability and progress monitoring by principals and district leaders. Fourth, we need to help teachers implement remote learning best practices that are responsive to student needs. Only 44% of student respondents said their remote learning experience was good or excellent. The largest category stated it was okay at 37.4%. Parent data followed the same trend, with 42% of parents saying their students' remote learning experience was good or excellent, and the largest single category was okay with 36.6%. 52% of parents said they were concerned, very concerned, or quite concerned with their students' learning during remote learning. Teachers, the two highest priority requests from teachers for specific resources and professional learning were use of Google Classroom and other tools for engaging students in remote learning and best practices for remote learning. In response, a hybrid model increases engagement with teachers, increases opportunities for students to engage with their peers, and for both in-person and remote. We will need clear expectations for observation of virtual instruction to provide feedback and support for improvements. Additionally, we will codify best practices and engage in best practice sharing across the district and through networks. I want to walk through some of the models that were considered. So you'll see here a chart with 3 columns. In order to make sure the learning experience at CPS is safe, accessible, and seamless, it is important to keep in mind that our reopening framework has been developed by health and education leaders, and that it is aligned with guidance from the Chicago Department of Public Health, Illinois Department of Public Health, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We also worked in close partnership with public health officials, other districts as well throughout the country, and our own stakeholders to develop protocols, processes, and practices to maximize student learning and public health. As a result of working with our partners, we considered several different instructional models for reopening. I want to call attention to the Learn at School Full Time, which is the column to the far right. This has all students and staff attending in-person instruction every day. In-person instruction is the most conducive to learning and essential to building community and supporting our students' social and emotional well-being. However, we all wish that we could have a normal first day of school this fall. However, we know that due to the current reality of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are simply not at a stage in which every student and staff member can return to school safely. Another model involves learning at home full-time through daily remote learning, and that is the model that you'll see at the far left column. While this model offers the lowest risk of spreading COVID-19, it also poses significant challenges to learning, particularly for our most vulnerable student populations. The third option, which you see the column in the middle, is the hybrid model, which is what we are recommending in our preliminary framework. This model includes both at-home and in-school learning. In this model, only half of the student body attends in-person instruction at a time to balance the critical need for health and safety mandates with the value of in-person learning. Due to the constantly evolving nature of COVID-19, we understand that we will need to be flexible in our approach and prepare to potentially switch between these models during the school year. We will choose our path forward based on feedback from our educators, school leaders, and families, and the most up-to-date guidance from public health officials. As Dr. Jackson stated earlier, we will be engaging our families, our educators, and school leaders towards a final plan for school opening. A little bit about the hybrid model. Given the current public health situation, we believe a hybrid model where students learn from home and attend school a limited number of days per week is the safest way to provide in-person instruction to our students. For in-person learning, students will be placed in pods. Pods are small, fixed groups to minimize interactions with students and staff in other pods. If a case of COVID-19 is confirmed at the school, this model minimizes the potential number of exposures to the virus and allows for timely and efficient contact tracing. A standard class will be divided into 2 pods of approximately 15 students. Pod A will learn at school on Mondays and Tuesdays, engage in 3 hours of real-time virtual classroom instruction. Can we get a slide change, please, so that we can see? So if you look here at this visual, you see 2 pods, Pod A and Pod B, divided in shifts. Pod A will learn at school on Mondays and Tuesdays. So if you see Pod A, they're at school. Below, you see Pod B on Mondays and Tuesdays at home. On Wednesdays, Pod A and Pod B will engage in 3 hours of real-time virtual classroom instruction with their teacher and classmates in Pod B. This provides an opportunity for the teacher and students, the entire class, to come together virtually to build a sense of community, as well as support the opportunity for cleaning between pods. So as Pod A leaves for at-home learning, on Wednesdays, the deep cleaning would take place in preparation to receive Pod B, who will be reporting for in-person learning Thursday and Friday. Next slide. Benefits of health pods. A pod of students and staff will allow for an easily identifiable group to remain together for all in-person instruction and activities during the school day. Student pods will be kept stable with minimal interaction with other pods. Assigning pods will help minimize interactions between students and instructional staff and reduce the potential for spread of COVID-19 within the school community. Pods also allow for rapid contact tracing and self-quarantine guidance to be quickly disseminated if a positive COVID-19 case occurs within a pod. This also means that if a COVID-19 case is identified, potentially only 1 pod may need to be quarantined instead of the entire school. Schools should ensure 6 feet of physical distance between students and staff from other pods, particularly at times when intermingling could occur, such as arrival and dismissal. And classrooms should maintain social distancing as much as possible among students and staff in the pod. Due to the unpredictable nature of COVID-19, the hybrid model will support a variety of scenarios that may take place throughout the year, including if a student or pod must quarantine, or if there is a surge in the infection, causing district-wide remote learning to occur. Those decisions will be based on clear criteria from CDPH. Now let's take a look at the day in the life of a student. If students are able to attend in person, this is what they can expect their day to look and feel like. Parents or guardians will complete the required online screener for each child at home. Students will wear cloth face coverings while on the school bus. School bus aides will wear appropriate PPE and offer students hand sanitizer prior to boarding the bus. Students will sit by themselves or with a member of their household and spaced out on the bus to ensure proper social distancing. Drop-off times may be staggered, and students will enter the school building through assigned entrances with their pods in order to ensure proper social distancing. Upon entering the school building, students will wash their hands and use hand sanitizer. Students will be required to go straight to their classrooms. They will sit in assigned seats, eat meals in their classroom, and stay with their pod for the full school day. Continuing with the day in the life, students and teachers will wear masks at all times, and close contact between students and teachers will be limited. Only a limited set of supplies may be shared, and hand sanitizer will be used as needed. Pods will have designated bathrooms, which will be cleaned frequently throughout the day. Students will need to wash their hands thoroughly and use hand sanitizer anytime they return to their classroom. Students will eat lunch in their classrooms, or if space allows, eat lunch in the cafeteria on a staggered schedule. And then lunchrooms will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected between each use. Our related service providers, English learner teachers, diverse learner teachers, and social emotional learning specialists, among others, will continue to provide student services. These staff members will rotate across assigned pods to provide services, so they will have a limited number of pods assigned to them. And if they need to see students in a pod that is not assigned to them, Those services will be provided remotely or with social distancing. Staff will be provided appropriate PPE depending on their job duties. Continuing with the day in the life, if we could move to the next slide, students will remain in their assigned pod throughout the day, but additional teachers may rotate across a few pods to provide instruction across multiple subjects and breaks for classroom teachers. Students will move through hallways within their pods and maintain social distance from all other pods. Students will leave the building through the door assigned to their pod. If a student comes to school exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms or begins to experience symptoms during the day, they will be moved to the school's designated care room to wait until they are picked up. Students can attend out-of-school time programming. Schools must either maintain classroom pods for out-of-school time programs or form additional fixed pods specifically for out-of-school time programs. Students participating in out-of-school time programs must maintain social distance to the extent feasible within their pods and must maintain 6 feet of distance from other out-of-school time pods at all times or remain in separate spaces from other pods. Out-of-school time providers are encouraged to create visual adaptations of programming wherever possible in order to minimize the need for additional pods. Let's take a look at attendance models. After reviewing local, state, and federal public health guidelines, receiving feedback from our staff, student, and family surveys and focus groups, and conferring with other large urban school districts, we determined that implementing a hybrid scheduling model for grades K through 10 is the best option to provide in-person instruction this fall while adhering to public health guidance. We are proposing an in-person only instruction plan for pre-K students based on age and developmental learning needs. Our youngest learners will benefit from the consistency and social emotional advantages of in-person classroom instruction. Under our preliminary framework, high school juniors and seniors will participate in a full day of learning from home that includes daily real-time virtual instruction, engagement, and feedback with teachers and classmates. Given the diverse scheduling needs of juniors and seniors, it is not possible to establish pods to limit interaction with other students and staff. A learn at home model will ensure that our high school juniors and seniors can benefit from being able to take their diverse, full array of course offerings. Schools will have flexibility, however, with regard to how and when to bring in upperclassmen for in-person instruction or other activities in order to ensure graduation requirements are met. So there will be situations where upperclassmen are able to come to school in person. For example, there may be CTE courses for which they will not be able to participate virtually that they can participate in at school. Also, senior seminar may be able to take place in opportunities for post-secondary counseling and advising, which may require them to come into the school. Finally, the district recognizes that certain student populations require different levels of in-person instruction based on age and developmental learning needs. We are working on a plan to bring many of these students back into the classroom during our all in-person instruction days. And we remain committed to providing our students with the supports and resources they need to be successful during this challenging time. The decision to use different attendance models was not made lightly. As we know, it will present logistical challenges for our families, which is why it's important for us to engage in this process of having our voice of our parents, our school leaders, and our educators heard to get to a place where we have a final plan. Learning at home. On days students are learning at home, they will engage in a minimum of 5 hours of instructional activity per day, and attendance will be tracked. While they won't have live instruction, teachers will design activities including pre-recorded lessons, independent work to build skills, and independent projects connected to the curriculum. Schools should also leverage digital curriculum and tools to create a well-rounded experience for their students. On Wednesdays, as I stated earlier, when all students will be working from home, students will engage in 3 hours of real-time instruction with their peers and teacher. Full remote learning. So now I'll walk through full remote. Our reopening plans allow for the possibility that we may need to return to full remote learning. Remote learning is different from learning at home in our hybrid approach. During remote learning, students will participate in 5 hours of learning, including live instruction with their teachers and classmates, supplemented by digital curriculum resources and independent work. All students will access virtual learning through Google Suite tools as part of a wider transition to Google platforms. Additional details on new learning expectations and improvements will be provided in the final reopening framework. I want to address the social emotional supports that will be provided, because this was one thing that we heard overwhelmingly from both our students that were engaged as well as our parents and teachers. We know that we must attend to the social and emotional well-being of our students as they navigate a new way of learning. Increasing our social and emotional learning supports is critical in order to meet our students' growing needs. Now more than ever, many of our students are experiencing feelings of loss, fear, anxiety, and anger in response to stressors in their lives and communities, including the COVID-19 pandemic and the social issues plaguing our country. To better support our students in person and virtually, the Office of Social Emotional Learning will provide schools with training on strategies for rebuilding a sense of school community. We will introduce a grief curriculum for small group interventions, expand small group trauma interventions such as CBITS, which is Cognitive Behavioral Intervention for Trauma Schools, and Bounce Back, which is a school-based group intervention for elementary students that are exposed to trauma, as well as SPARKS, which is structured psychotherapy for adolescents responding to chronic stress. And we will be introducing classroom-based activities for managing stress and anxiety. We are also expanding our partnerships with community agencies for referral or on-site services. Continuing to the next slide with additional social emotional learning, we will be releasing guidance on supportive discipline in remote hybrid learning, including guidance on how to respond to behaviors such as Zoom bombing, not wearing face masks, etc. While these services and resources are designed to support students, we are also committed to creating resources and supports for school staff, including strategies for individual care, such as mindfulness training, which will also be provided for students, and strategies for adult collective care, such as adult SEL practices and virtual support circles for administrators facilitated by restorative practice agencies. We are hopeful about the impact these services will have on students and staff. Key to ensuring our hybrid learning model works is ensuring new health protocols are in place. And so now I would like to invite Dr. Fox, our district's Chief Health Officer, to provide an overview of how we can plan to keep our staff and students healthy and safe.
All right, thank you, Chief McDade, and good afternoon, everybody. Can I be heard?
Yes, Dr. Fox, please proceed.
Thank you. Well, before I go over some of the specifics we will enact this year, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. The health and safety of our students, educators, and staff will always be our top priority. And every decision we make about reopening will begin with the best of what is known scientifically about the pandemic. I want everyone to understand that the plan we're proposing is designed to adapt to changing public health conditions. If it is safe to do so, we will begin our hybrid learning model on September 8th. As the public health situation in Chicago evolves, so will our plan. Should COVID cases rise too quickly, and if the health of our students and staff is thus threatened, we will pivot immediately to a full at-home learning model. If schools are able to reopen safely this fall, many new protocols will be enacted. First, all CPS students, staff, and visitors will complete an online symptom screener each day they enter a CPS building. A parent or designated family member must complete the symptom screener on behalf of each child each day, regardless of age. If any student or visitor presents to school without having completed the screener, they must be screened on arrival. In addition, all staff, visitors, and students will have a fever check after arrival at school. Anyone with a temperature of 100 degrees, 0.4 Fahrenheit or higher will be sent home. If any staff member, visitor, or student comes to school with symptoms, they will be sent home immediately. Each school will designate a care room, which will serve as a staff supervised temporary waiting area if a student needs to be picked up by a parent or guardian. This is not a clinic. This is not an instructional space. In addition to all these measures, all will be required to wear face coverings in school buildings to ensure students are not able to congregate during times of transition. Students will enter and exit their school building using assigned locations and will use bathrooms specifically assigned to their pod to limit interaction with other children in the school. All students will eat lunch in their classrooms or in a large space like a cafeteria if proper social distancing between pods can be maintained. And the final slide here. Every single Chicagoan must do their part to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. We must be vigilant, and we must model the behaviors we want to see in our communities. So we're socializing with 4 following messages. We're changing CPS culture. Do not go to work or school if you're sick. Wear face coverings whenever you're out in public. Maintain social distancing and limit your contact with others. Wash your hands thoroughly and regularly with soap and water, or use hand sanitizer containing at least 60% alcohol if hand washing is not possible. Working together in the ways I outlined, we will crush this common foe and keep our schools and communities as safe as can be in the age of COVID. Now, I'll turn things over to Chief Rivera, who will walk us through some of the investments we're making to ensure safety while students, staff, and visitors are in our building. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. As we plan for next school year, our #1 priority is to ensure the safest possible learning environment for all of our students and our staff members. To prepare to hopefully welcome students and staff back to our facilities this fall, CPS has purchased more than 1.2 million reusable face coverings. We'll be installing over 42,000 hand sanitizing dispensers. We've procured more than 40,000 containers of disinfecting wipes, 22,000 infrared thermometers, hospital-grade disinfectant sprayers, and additional PPE for the specialty roles that Chief McDade previously mentioned. We are also hiring nearly 400 additional custodians to help carry out stringent cleaning protocols every day in each of our schools. With these investments and the protocols Dr. Fox mentioned previously, we feel confident in our ability to keep students and educators safe in our buildings. As Dr. Jackson mentioned, we are now in the process of collecting feedback and engaging stakeholders in our draft reopening plan. We will be holding a series of virtual community meetings during this time. We will also be collecting feedback via a survey posted at cps.edu/reopening2020survey. All one word. Let me say that again. cps.edu/reopening2020survey. We strongly encourage all of our students, parents, educators, and community partners to share their feedback and participate in these events. During the first week of August, we will release our final plan for reopening schools on September 8th. This guidance will be informed by the feedback we receive over the next 2 weeks and could change again prior to the start of school, depending on the public health information that is available at that time. All of our final decisions will be guided by science, and our top priority will always be the health and safety of all of our students and staff. This concludes our presentation.
That concludes our remarks.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Here and on the phone? Any questions? Yes.
President Del Valle, this is Luisiana Melendez. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Member Melendez, please.
Thank you. My first question has to do with practical issues. I commend the team for putting such a comprehensive plan in place, but the complexity is awe-inspiring and also a little scary. I was wondering, the wearing of face masks, I think is highly recommended. But one thing that I have noticed myself is that after a couple of hours, if you are speaking, throughout that time, those masks need replacing. And I was wondering if there would be a stock for schools to replace masks or to that become non-functioning for that or for any other reason. And then will the children be taking the masks that they use during the day home? How will they be sanitized, replaced, etc.? And then I have another question that is less practical, issue related.
Ernie, do you want to respond?
Sure, and I'll let Dr. Fox weigh in on anything from a health perspective. But the procurement of face masks will allow us to provide 3 reusable cloth face coverings for every student and staff member in the district, with the idea that with frequent cleaning of each of the masks, those 3 masks will get every staff member and every student through the course of the year. We worked really closely with our health and wellness team to identify that right number. We are also going to be providing each school with enough disposable face coverings in the event that an issue arises, as Board Member Melendez noted, but also in the event that a student or a staff member just shows up to school without their mask. Everyone's still going through an adjustment where sometimes people are walking out the door and we're grabbing our keys or wallets and don't necessarily grab our face coverings. So we will make sure that every school has an ample number of those disposable face coverings in the event that a student or staff member needs one.
Thank you. My second question has to do with the type of learning that usually occurs with our youngest learners, but also in early elementary, when there's a lot of interaction, sharing of materials, etc., which is very pedagogically sound, but presents risks in this different and unprecedented time. So my question is, will there be more specific information later on about how those contingencies will be addressed, or specific recommendations for pre-K, K, and maybe early elementary classes where materials are often shared among children?
Yes, we are building out complete educator guidance that will include the health measures that have to be practiced across all grade levels and classrooms, so that teachers and principals understand exactly what steps and protocols need to be in place in terms of how we disinfect materials that might need to be shared. So, and that's in addition to some of the things that I noted in the lessons learned that will be provided in guidance, from instruction to health measures to scheduling. So it'll be a full and comprehensive guidance document, which will be informed not just from our district offices, but from our schools and the voice of our educators as well.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Member Truss.
More of a comment, and staff feel free to comment on it. But you know, one of the reasons is I indicated my primary concern is with making sure that we also educate, you know, families and all stakeholders in the fact that we need to have to make sure that some of the same practices that we you know, like our children to practice in school, and they have to be realistic that we have to make sure they practice in their home. Also understand that it doesn't just end at the beginning of the school day, but there's some things that families need to do at home to make sure that those practices are reinforced with the students. So that way that they can, you know, help with making this hybrid restart successful.
Is there any other question, Vice President Rivaluri?
Yeah, I wanted to echo, this is an extremely complex situation. We're balancing a lot of things at a large scale, and I really appreciate the thought that has gone into planning this approach and also to incorporating the changing health situation and the many voices of members of the community, including teachers and families and students. So I really appreciate it. I am sure that you will be doing at least as much work going forward, and people in schools will be doing at least as much work going forward to make this a reality as the ground shifts between our below our feet. I guess I had one question. Chief McDade, you kind of touched on this. How are we providing support for schools to make their plans in addition to the guidance that you just described? One aspect that I'm thinking about is at the high school level, the pod approach may be different from the master schedule that principals or schedulers anticipated, and the availability of teachers may be fluctuating as well as they're making their decisions about how they feel safe teaching students. And building a master schedule is often challenging for schools under normal circumstances, but I'm sure there's 100 other things that I'm not even thinking about. So how are we providing schools with that support as they take it to the next stage for what works at their school?
We will be providing schools with scheduling support. So for as much as we're creating an educator guidance document, basically from soup to nuts in terms of everything that needs to be addressed in the school, we're also providing supports that they might need, scheduling being one. A couple of things. One, not just providing them with the operational support in terms of how to build a schedule, directly providing resources to them and individuals that can help support them build those schedules, but also providing them with models that they can either use directly, select from and use directly, or modify to meet their individual school needs. This is going to require for us to look at a lot of things, scheduling being one, with more ingenuity and innovation, and not try to stick to just traditional models of how we plan and schedule. And so we are fully prepared to support our principals with that, both providing them with samples that they could follow or template type model schedules, as well as providing them with services that would help them be able to build their schedules.
Is there another question? Yes, Member Tabril.
Yes, thank you. I mean, as with other people, I just want to say that, you know, this is so difficult and there's no good choices, it feels like. And so the thought and effort that has gone into this to come up with solutions and all those who have worked diligently to find a way forward, I just really appreciate. One of the things that has kept coming up since we've gone remote is in the spring was the issue of internet connectivity. And I think the Chicago Connected was announced since our last board meeting. And I was very excited to hear about that. And I was just wondering if you could talk a bit more about the program and how it is already or going to be rolled out since remote learning, whether learning at home or remote is going to be a part of the fall. Because I think it's just so important that we have a solution. And I know other people have been looking to us in terms of thinking about what making sure our young people have access looks like.
Thank you, Board Member Todd Breland. As you know, the Chicago Connected program is targeting about 100,000 CPS households based off of the eligibility criteria, including economic hardship and other similar factors. And right after the announcement, we started doing robocalls, mailings, working to directly connect with those families to get the process started. And I know we're working on providing both Dr. Jackson as well as the board with updated numbers. We're also partnering with a number of community-based organizations across the city to really help handhold a lot of those families to both make sure they have an understanding of, what they're eligible for and actually work to to evaluate their options, whether it's hardwired broadband access or MiFi units, really to make sure that we can get these families in the system, both for the summer, but certainly by the time the start of school. So we can definitely provide you. We're working on providing periodic updates as numbers come in, and we'll make sure we provide the board and make that information publicly available as well.
Thank you. And then I guess also on remote learning, there was some conversation about learnings from the spring, and I was wondering, I mean, it's still new, but if anything has been learned from summer school or around how remote learning worked in summer school relative to the spring, not necessarily data, but also thank you, Shannon, though, for all this data. Like, I look forward to looking at this data more, but just any learnings from the summer.
Well, it just started.
Yeah.
So, we've just started up 1 weekend. And so we haven't been able to, a lot of that focus has been on, making sure that students are present, registration, et cetera. So we'll be able to give you a full update on summer once we have, a little bit more visibility into what's happening and be able to assess that situation. We did get, there has been some, this is not based on any survey or anything
Sure.
like that, but of course, sometimes teachers weigh in. And I've gotten a couple of messages from teachers saying that they appreciated the structured curriculum that was available. So I think that's one really big thing that we also noticed across the board. So, but more to come once we get a little bit more data to share.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I also just want to lift up the fact that we actually do have this period to do public comment. I think that's not something I've seen other districts doing, and I think it's something that's really important. And so I appreciate that this is a preliminary framework and that there is time for parents and teachers and students to have a chance to give feedback. And I hope that everyone does go either to participate in these sessions next week or online with the survey. I filled out my survey as a parent already. But I'm curious if there are questions, is there a mechanism for having the public be able to ask questions, or is the main way to go to these sessions next week and the sessions?
There will be a Q&A at the end of the session.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Jackson, I just want to double down on the appreciation for the work that you and your leadership team have done here. It's been a remarkable amount of insight and guidance. It's been really research-based, and I also really want to encourage people to go to the survey.
Yeah.
And I think we've heard a lot of questions from teachers in particular, and I really appreciate that there's going to be an extensive guidance document released for teachers, and that professional learning is really being considered for teachers. Is there any other way that teachers can learn more about what's to come? So I know there's a lot still that's up in the air, and I know you've been giving lots of thought to this. So is there anything else teachers can do?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. A lot of the guidance will be included in the document that Chief McDade talked about. But one of the reasons why it was important to get this data out sooner rather than later is to get this at the local school level. We understand this plan is complex on its own, but it's especially complex for teachers trying to navigate this new model. And so we want to make sure that we're clear about the expectations between learning at home and remote learning. Those are two different things, but also providing as many templates and schedules and models as possible to teachers so they don't have to go and reinvent the wheel while they're trying to navigate between in-person and remote or learning at home instruction. And so there is more to come. A lot of it will be guided at the local school level. Our principals are already working on that. We're getting a lot of questions about when can they start engaging staff. Some of them have already started that virtually. And so it's a work in progress, but I would say by the end of this month, we'll definitely see an increase in teacher engagement. because we need the professionals at the local level really bringing these plans to life. So more to come on that, but I want teachers to know there is a plan for professional learning. There is a plan for training, not only for the academic part of this, but also around the health protocols and everything that people are going to be expected to do in the fall should we return to in-person instruction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And on the professional development, we are going to, as we've already indicated here today, and in the preliminary framework, that we are going to strengthen our remote learning efforts here. But I want to ask this question. As it stands now, and until we decide on exactly what we're going to do, a parent who wants to go with remote can make that decision.
Absolutely. And I can talk a little bit about that. Just
Please.
clarify.
Yes.
So yeah, as I was stating in the opening remarks, every family should be able to see an option in there for them. So if you have pre-existing health conditions or you're uncomfortable with returning to a school setting, you can opt into the fully remote option. Similarly, we've heard from a lot of parents who want to see their children in school, and so they will have that hybrid model that we've been talking so much about. A few things that I want to clarify. We will be asking parents to register their students for the upcoming school year. We need everyone to participate in that process. And so parents will be hearing more about that when we launch our plan in early August. But essentially, we will ask parents, what is your preference in the fall? And they will make a determination at that time. It's important to note that if a parent opts into remote learning, that if they opt out of remote, if they opt out of in-person learning and only want a remote learning, that they will have to commit to that for at least 10 weeks for a quarter at a time. And that is to allow for adequate planning at the school level, allow for planning at the classroom level, but also to make sure that we are not breaking up those pods that we have in place. And so there is going to be a very strict process for opting back into in-person instruction through the hybrid model, where we're making sure people are quarantining before they enter the pod, et cetera. So more to come on that. Also, we're going to be asking parents to, just to make it clear to schools what their desire is. If someone opts into the hybrid model and then they become ill or uncomfortable, et cetera, they will be able to go into an all remote model. So I want to make that distinction clear. You can opt into all remote at any point given your comfort level. But once you commit to remote, you will have to commit to that for 10 weeks.
And of course, that's for many
for
obvious
health.
reasons.
Yeah.
It would be very disruptive if
They'd be
people
going
went back and forth.
Absolutely.
Or disruptive for the student and for the staff.
Yeah.
In terms of teachers, individuals with underlying conditions, part of a higher risk group.
Yeah.
What's the plan for them?
There is a process that our talent department will be releasing soon. But essentially, teachers with pre-existing health conditions will be able to apply through the FMLA process and or the ADA process for accommodations, depending on what the situation calls for. Individuals who can work but must work from home, those are teachers that we're going to be utilizing for our remote and learning academies and things like that. Each plan is going to be unique to each school, but we do have some guiding principles that will, guide how we do that planning. But teachers with pre-existing conditions, they will apply through either FMLA process or the ADA process to make sure that they have the proper accommodations in place.
So everyone will be addressed in one way or another.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Member Sotelo.
First of all, thank you. Just like the rest of the board members, thank you for all your hard work that you put into this. I know we've seen many iterations and many scenario planning, so I know there's been a lot. And more importantly, for the work ahead, because there is still going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of ideas, and I certainly encourage all of the the parents, the students, the teachers to participate in the community feedback session so that we can incorporate some additional thoughts. So thank you for that flexibility. I have several questions, so I'll touch on some. First one is on expanding on the preparation for enhanced remote learning readiness, right? So there's no question that remote learning is going to be here to stay as part of this hybrid model. So how are we ensuring that our teachers and administrators and our students are as ready as possible to improve the effectiveness of remote learning? And I'm going to come back to one of the questions on the data in a second. There was a lot of richness of data, so I took a lot of notes. I have a couple of questions on that in a second.
Yeah.
But what are we doing to ensure that we improve the quality of the remote learning? Because all students should be planning for that. Obviously, all are going to go through that process. So it's a preparation for both the students, the parents, and the teachers to make sure that we are as prepared as possible for that scenario. That's question one. And that's probably for Chief McDade, because I know you touched upon that earlier. So if there's any additional information you can share on that. And then I'll come back to some more technical questions.
I think I did address some of this earlier. What I did not share is that we have a full suite of professional learning for teachers that will be shared throughout this summer via modules. So opportunities for teachers to do kind of self-directed modules that will provide them with training. Some of what we heard from teachers had to do with the fact that they needed more professional development to meet the wide range of capacity for the technology. So you have novice teachers that needed more support with the Google Suite. And then you also had advanced teachers that, had advanced skills in technology and didn't need kind of like the basic training. So we do have a lot of technical training that will be provided, but that's also going to be combined with content specific training. So we are releasing early some of our content that has been curated in the CEI, the Curriculum Equity Initiative. While that was not ready for release until July 2022, we do have already some lessons, digital lessons, both student facing and teacher guides already ready to go in beta form. So it's still in a form for feedback from teachers. So we'll be releasing that, as well as any lessons that are already ready that can be used within the classroom. Of course, there's licensing and things like that with the vendors that we have to work through. But we're going to release as much content as we can as possible early, so that teachers will have something, already in their repertoire to be able to use now. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Great.
We'll be providing supports to teachers in terms of how to, as they bring students in, not just bringing them in, but as one of the benefits, if we are able to do hybrid, bringing the students in person will give teachers an opportunity to work with students to prepare them through routines and structures for the remote periods that they'll be in, or the learn at home. So those are some of the ways that we're approaching that. And then also providing supports to our school leaders so that they can provide job embedded professional development throughout the year as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So a follow-up question to that. This is more of on the technical side. So we talked about Wednesdays being all remote, at least 5 hours of instructional time. And I'm assuming that's primarily for the elementary schools, because the high school students have different set of classes throughout. So I'm assuming they'll get virtual instruction on all of their classes during that day. Or am I not interpreting those 5 hours correctly?
I think those, I don't know if you want to chime in, but I think those schedules, first of all, I don't know that it's 5 hours on those days. Is it
Which day?
on the
Wednesdays.
So it's 5 hours for the student, in that they'll have 3 hours of direct instruction, real-time instruction from the teacher virtually.
Yeah.
But then they'll be released to then do independent assignments at home across the different core content areas, as well as be able to access some of the ed tech platforms.
And the teachers will have the afternoon to plan, and that's additional planning other than what they've been given through the CBA. because we're asking them to do some things that are pretty unique. As far as high schools are concerned, we would do that the same way we do any other early release. You see all of your teachers, but instead of the class being 50 minutes, it's a condensed period of time. But again, these are the type of things we're not going to work out at this level. Each school is going to come up with their own individual plan. With 600 schools, it's impossible for us to kind of guide that at the top, but we will give them parameters such as 3 hours of instruction, X amount of hours for teacher planning, and then schools will be empowered to make those schedules fit based on the needs of their communities.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
On the data, there was a lot of information in there, and certainly there was a lot of misconceptions in terms of the grading, the pass, and the fail. So it was really good to see all of that information. As we start to think, and I know it's going to be hard for now, but I'm just going to plant the question in terms of the readiness of our students to be ready to do what's next. And here I'm talking about two things. I'm talking about learning loss, but also are they really learning what they should be learning at a pace relative to their peers, not just, and their peers, by the way, I don't mean just within CPS. I mean globally, I mean digitally, right? So are they going to be ready to compete? Because it's not just about the resources the CPS has, right there. You see that, and you saw it in the data. You saw the differences in terms of grades between racial groupings, right? So it's not just about the access to devices or access to Wi-Fi. There are some other resources that are helping other students with some other information. So how we start to think about making sure that the students are ready to be successful in whatever they decide to do, right? To be able to be ready to go into digital factories, right? They're experiencing a lot of digital information right now, and digital is certainly going to be part of the career path going forward. And I'm just concerned that during this process, there will be a further gap that's hidden by the data, that's hidden by the grades, right? And we had to issue a policy. So, I'm glad to see that there wasn't that much of a disparity, but I'm not sure that the quality of that education was commensurate with those grades. So I'm just thinking out loud here about how are we thinking about making sure that the quality of the education of the students gets them ready to be successful, whatever they decide to want to do next.
Yeah, I think the plan that we put in place prioritized a few things. I think number one, it was health and safety. I am never going to tell you that the plan that we put in front of you is the same as having access to a teacher every single day. And that is not just a highly qualified teacher, but schools and conditions that allow for a high quality education. We don't have that even in our normal circumstances. There are disparities that exist. So I just don't want to even pretend that is something that any school district is going to achieve in the middle of a pandemic. The plan that we did put in place tries to allow for our students to compete, because we know in a fully remote model that the disparity will get more broad because of the access to internet connectivity, because of the access to devices, because, maybe parents' educational level, the ability to hire tutors, and all these other factors that come into play. So I just want to reframe the question, because I can't really answer that question honestly, because that's the challenge in public education, period. So I just want to level set there. What we are doing is, that's why we are trying to get our kids in school as much as possible, but we have to also take into consideration the health conditions that exist. Let's make no mistake, this is going to be disruptive to children. No one knows at this time how disruptive it's going to be, because I would imagine that the disruption is shared across the board, no matter what your race, SES, and income level is. If kids aren't going to school on a regular basis, they're going to be impacted. But what that disparity looks like amongst ethnic groups and socioeconomic groups, we won't know that for years to come. But I do know that there are people who are already studying and looking at that information. So our approach has been to remove the barriers, whether that is devices, internet connectivity, et cetera. Try to institute as much normalcy as possible into other programs such as AP, our Learn, Plan, Succeed requirement, where kids have a plan when they graduate. And so trying to keep as many of those normal processes in place that we know help students, not just in the immediate, but in the long term. But I just want to be clear, like our plan is how do we provide schooling given the constraints that we have before us? And we know that there are going to be things that we have to address in the short term and quite frankly, in the long term for all students that are being educated in this environment. So I know that's not a perfect answer, but I think that's the reality. And I don't want to just make up stuff to respond to a question. This is a problem, and everybody has this problem in this country.
Yeah. And Dr. Jackson, I just want to add one other point to one, echoing everything that was stated in the challenges that we have before us. But I do want to add that we are paying close attention to what's coming out, not just by way of research, but what our partners throughout the country are laying out in terms of considerations for teaching and learning. The Council of Chief State School Officers released Restart and Recovery, which is a guide on considerations for teaching and learning. And as we speak, our leaders are in the Summer Leadership Institute, and we're providing professional learning to them now. And we're laying out our 2021 instructional priorities and giving 6 specific instructional priorities to make sure that when students come back, we're not in a situation where they're hyper focused on only intervention or remedial skills, but making sure that it's high quality, standards aligned curriculum and instruction that's happening. So I won't read out all 6 of the instructional priorities, but one of the ways that we're trying to combat that, especially low expectation, is through laying out as a district and clearly communicating what our expectations for teaching and learning are for both our leaders as well as our teachers.
Great. Well, thank you both. And I agree with both of you. I don't expect it to be a magic answer, but it's something that we need to keep front and center, especially as we plan ahead, because there will be some additional challenges that we need to help them with. The last question I have is for Dr. McDade. Thank you so much for restarting the summer practices for some of the sports and with the guidance and the safety. Can you just expand a little bit about that? And I'm just talking about the earlier comments that you made earlier in opening remarks. You said some schools, you said some sports, and so I want to just understand a little bit more how it was decided, which sports, which schools, and what are we doing to make sure that, again, we have equitable access to all the students and all the sports that would like some type of outdoor practices so that they have some sense of normalcy in a safe, healthy environment.
Well, one thing that I appreciate here at CPS is that we believe in our leaders, and we believe in flexibility and autonomy and making the right decisions for their individual school communities and environments. We put out our return to play guidelines for every school, every high school. But we also said to our school leaders that you must strictly follow this guidance, and considering your coaching staff and what your parents and community want, if you feel that you cannot adhere to the guidance strictly and ensure the health protocols are met, or if maybe your school community is saying they're not ready yet, they had the flexibility to be able to make that decision to say that they're going to wait and they're not going to offer the summer return to play program. So the vast majority of our schools took advantage of that. We've been without incident thus far. We have our team, our Office of Sports is regularly auditing and checking to make sure that all teams are following through with the safety and health protocols. But we did have some schools that said we're not ready yet, and we respected that because each school community is different.
Great, thank you.
Is Dr. Fox still, is he able to answer questions? No?
Dr. Fox, are you still on the line?
I'm still here. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Can
I couldn't hear the question.
Sorry, Lucina, were you done?
Yes,
I didn't mean
yes.
to jump in. I had a Dr. Fox related question, but I guess I just wanted to go back to something that was said. I mean, I think one of the things to me that I really appreciate that I heard today is that, and this sort of gets to my Dr. Fox, like science is guiding this. The conditions on the ground are going to guide and help to determine what decisions are being made. And that's really important. And then also the emphasis on SEL. Students can't learn if they're not whole. And it was just, I was very happy to hear about some of the increased emphasis on SEL, the grief curriculum, managing stress and anxiety, et cetera, and how important that's going to be, regardless of the modality in which our young people are learning this fall. There's a lot of trauma in this city. I came in heavy today. There was a mass shooting last night, right? And we talk about, we don't talk about the trauma that everybody in that community and adjacent to that community feels right now, including our children, including the fact that some of the people injured were likely parents of our students, right? And have connections. And so I think that focus on SEL is so important. And so I was very happy to hear that. And also just the focus on the science and SEL is guiding and being at the forefront of how we think about what school will look like in whatever format that is this fall. So thank you for that. And I guess directly for Dr. Fox, because it was mentioned a couple times in the presentation about contact tracing, which is, I feel like it's a term I hear, but I really don't quite understand it, to be frank, and what that looks like in the school setting via this plan. I mean, it seems to be part of the impetus for the pods, et cetera, but whether that's Dr. Fox or someone else would be most appropriate to sort of spell out what that looks like in the plan as it's discussed.
Yes, I'm happy to take a crack at that. We absolutely recognize the importance of prompt identification of cases, and that's important because you want those people to be isolated as quickly as possible. Now, once a case occurs, it's also really important to know who are the direct contacts or first degree contacts of the case. And that's a question that we're going to ask every time a case is reported to us. So cases reported to us, the CPS and the Office of Student Health and Wellness, and an intake person who's trained by me in our office. We collect from the person the details, the relevant details of the case. So what happened, when, what the symptoms were, etc. And we also will identify the direct contacts. This is where contact tracing comes in. So once you know who the direct contacts are, then you have to reach out to the direct contacts. Essentially, you're tracing the contacts of the case. And that's important because direct contacts go to 14-day quarantine. This is central to, keeping the virus in check, to keep transmission under control. And we want to do that quickly. We want to do it ideally within 24 hours. Now, the big advantage that we have with the plan that's been outlined is that we have the district arranged into these shifts and to pods. The advantage of a pod, this was stated a few times, but this is really important. One of the advantages of the pods provides us a great advantage in terms of knowing who the direct contacts are and being able to connect with them promptly. So let's say a case of a student is reported to us. Okay, we know what school the kid goes to, what shift they're on, and what pod they belong to. And then we check our data system. We find out, was the kid, actually in the school, present in the school, and in the pod. And if we find that out, then we know who's in the pod. And then we close the pod. But because we've maintained this integrity of the pod within the school, we don't have to shut down other pods within the school. Okay, but quite likely we would shut down the pod. And what that means is we'd be notifying all the people in the pod, students, and the teacher in the pod, or if there's more than one teacher who came to the pod, it was a direct contact. And a direct contact is somebody who spent who was within 6 feet of the case for 15 minutes, consecutive minutes or more. All right, so basically, we notify people in the pod, you're a direct contact, they go to 14-day quarantine, and that's really what the contact tracing is about, is reaching out to the direct contacts of the case. Now, we're doing this in collaboration with the Chicago Department of Public Health, and after that initial notification, we turn the ideas, we'll turn the data over to the Chicago Department of Public Health, and then a much more elaborate case investigation occurs. And further community contact tracing occurs. So by that I mean, further exploration, monitoring the symptoms of those who are in quarantine, and figure out who their contacts would be if they become cases. That is in the hands of CDPH. So contact tracing is essentially just figuring out who the direct contacts are and guiding them about the best ways to keep everybody safe and putting those who are in direct contact into quarantine.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask a related question, and then I have an opinion and then another question. Dr. Fox, you mentioned tracing. I was wondering if anywhere in the plan we are testing, we are planning to test folks or work with CDPH to test folks, whether students or staff who are in schools?
Yes, this is a very important question. It's a hot topic. Right now, we're not planning to do testing in schools. In Chicago, there are many available testing sites. Testing goes on. There are federally qualified community health centers. Testing goes on in doctors' offices and hospitals. There are city testing sites. And, we're making best use of all the resources that are available. As the technology improves, though, that there may be opportunities over the course of this to change our plan. If it becomes possible, and this is really just speculation, conjecture at this point, if it ever becomes possible to have very accessible, rapid testing, simple to administer, simple to report, etc., and as accurate as the current methods that we have, then that could be a game changer. And we would have to think, and also wonder. We would look at where are we in the trajectory of the pandemic. Would a grander scale school-based testing regimen be something attainable? Would it be something worth doing? And would it be feasible? Would it be affordable? These are all questions that could arise in the future. But right now, we do not have a plan for testing in schools.
Thank you.
We do currently collaborate, though. There are testing sites on school property. This has been going on for months. This is in collaboration with the city and CDPH. But that's a very different thing, I think, than what you're asking. What I had in mind when you asked the question triggered in my mind, what is going on actually in the school right now. We do not have a plan for testing in the school. But this might be something worth revisiting in the future should opportunities change and the need still be present.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I just wanted to share one opinion also. I've heard it in what Elizabeth just mentioned, that I think the board is uniformly happy that the plan is based on science. I would say the science includes both the science of infectious disease and of COVID, and it also includes the science of educational development. As Lucino pointed out, kids missing a year or two of instruction at key developmental stages, and kids are with us in CPS for multiple key developmental stages, that has a real long-term impact. And I was talking with a board member from another district, and the way that board member put it, our ability to keep people safe from viruses may actually be further ahead than our ability to catch kids up if they're 2, 3, 4 years behind. So just wanted to say that the quality of instruction is so important, and it's especially important to keep our most vulnerable students learning. And so I especially appreciate that you're making this a priority to figure that out, to make it better, and to support teachers across the many, many schools to do that. And then I had one other question. It's maybe in the category of unanswerable questions, but how long do we expect the hybrid situation to last, knowing that there's a wide distribution of possible outcomes around where we see things going right now? And specifically, you've said pretty clearly that the move to fully remote would be based on the public health situation. I think we see what that would look like. We certainly see it happening in other places in the country. I guess I'm wondering, what's the trigger for a move to full in-person, and how much notice do you see families having of such a change at a district scale?
Yeah. I think the answer to both of those scenarios is going to largely be determined by the health department, both at the city level and the state level. We have tried our best to align to both the mayor's phases and the state of Illinois' phases. So I think that's the short answer. Now, the details of those plans and how they change or get enacted over time, those things are dynamic and ever changing. If you even look at our current situation around when a bar is open or closed, those decisions get made at a different level. What I will say, and what I've been trying to help people understand, is like, beyond the fact that we need to get serious about being disciplined around all of the strategies to mitigate the spread of COVID, that's whether that be in the school setting or just in our daily lives. People thinking that COVID is going to go away is dangerous. And we see the position that it's putting America vis-a-vis when we look at other countries. You take, for example, a place like China that is 3 or 4 times the size of our country, and their outcomes look completely different because of the way in which this has been managed. That aside, if we can imagine a place where there is a vaccine to COVID that happens within the next couple of weeks, let's just be extremely optimistic. If that were even the case, we would have to manufacture it, distribute it, and then get people to take it, which is going to take a long time. You're going to have to get people to take it, which is logistically months on end. You're going to have to reach people who don't have access to quality or stable health care. You're going to have to reach people who may be uninformed or have a fear of taking a vaccine that's so new. And so I say all that to say, if people are waiting for a day when there is no longer a threat to COVID, that day is not on the horizon in the next couple of months or even the next year, I would say. Now, I'm not Dr. Fauci or Dr. Fox, but if we're being realistic, it's not going to happen soon. And so I think that the thing that I see that troubles me is people keep waiting for COVID to go away, but they keep behaving the same way they've always behaved, and that we have to do both. We have to behave differently. We have to learn how to live and do essential things in this environment until science catches up with our current circumstances. So I don't have a good answer on that, but if we magically had a vaccine in the next week or so, we're still, this entire year will be a year where we will either be in a hybrid model or an all remote model. I'm certain of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just jump. Yeah, please know, COVID is a long-term proposition. What we need to do, I think, is learn how to live with it. Okay? A vaccine would be a game changer. A treatment or cure would be a game changer. Herd immunity also would change things significantly. But these things are quite remote. I'm talking on the order of many, many months to years. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Member Revelori, any more questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Well, I also want to compliment and really thank all of you for the tremendous work that you've done in putting this preliminary plan together. As was stated here earlier, there is no perfect choice, for us. But I do want the public to know that you are listening. We are listening, and that these sessions that are coming up are important. And I don't want anyone out there to think, well, this is all done, it's settled, because it isn't. This is evolving. I know I have concerns, and I've expressed concerns about our juniors and seniors going all remote. I think of the violence that's out there, the trauma that's out there, and how that's affecting teenagers. Look at the statistics in the last few months, the number of teenagers who have been shot, the lives that have been lost. They're getting younger and younger. And we are going to have to make sure that we can do our intervention early through our teachers and our counselors and our school administrators. When we identify a young person who is not connecting, not engaging, we have to pull them in and provide the social and emotional learning support that's needed. We can't just wait till the end of till December rolls around to be able to determine whether or not a student is in need of help. And so the more we allow the student to connect with the school, in addition to the online learning that they're doing, I think the better off we are. And I know that you're working on that, and you're looking for how it is that we ensure the counseling, the academic counseling, and all the other services that students seek out and are in need of. But personal contact at the school, where possible, I think is necessary. And I know that in larger schools, it may not be as easy to schedule appointments with counselors, in-person appointments in a timely manner, but we have to try. We really do. I am concerned. I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel right now in terms of the violence that's going on out there. And I see it getting worse. In spite of all the efforts, and I know that the mayor loses sleep over this. We all lose sleep over it. And for the last, I don't know how many years, and I've been around a long time, schools have been the safest place for our kids. Schools have been the safest place. And if they don't have that school, then what happens? And so it's tough, but I thank you for the work that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
for those comments.
Any other comments or questions regarding the presentation? If not,
I just
yes.
wanted to thank you also for the community meetings. I'm looking forward to them. I'm going to attend as many as I can. And I think seeing how these meetings have progressed in the last year, when I've been paying the most attention, they're getting better and better, and they're getting more effective at engaging and hearing voices, even when we're meeting remotely. And I'm particularly excited about these because I look forward to people coming together across the city, which is one of the pluses of meeting virtually, that we're not just in, sort of the geographic areas of the city, but we have people with diverse experiences and diverse concerns, and they'll be able to talk both with each other and with district staff. So thank you for doing that. And I hope a lot of people will join us.
Thank you. Thank you once again. We'll now open up the floor for questions or comments on items on the public agenda if anyone has a question or comment. If not, we'll proceed with the vote on the public agenda items. Madam Secretary, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will begin with items on the public agenda, read the board report numbers and brief titles. We will begin with motions MO1 for election of the president and MO2 for election of the vice president. These items do require a vote, and I believe Vice President Reveluri will present MO1.
I move that the board elect Miguel Del Valle to the office of the President of the Board of Education of the City of Chicago.
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Todd Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
Yes.
We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. This motion is adopted by the board. Congratulations to Miguel Del Valle, President of the Chicago Board of Education. We will now proceed with MO2 for election of the vice president. And I believe Board Member Rome will present MO2. Member Rome?
I move that the board elect Sendel Reveluri to the office of the Vice President of the Board of Education of the City of Chicago.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Member Truss. Mr. President, I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Todd Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
Yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. MO2 is adopted by the board, and congratulations to Vice President Sendel Reveluri, Chicago Board of Education. Mr. President, I'll continue with public agenda items that do require a vote. RS1 is the resolution regarding cursive writing instruction policy in response to COVID-19. RS2 is the resolution to authorize appointment of members to LSC councils to fill the vacancies. PO1, Mr. President, is to rescind the current comprehensive non-discrimination policy and adopt an interim new comprehensive non-discrimination, harassment, sexual misconduct, and retaliation policy. And for the record, I would like to note that PO1 will be revised and the final will be included in the action. And I would ask that General Counsel Moriarty provide the details for the revision that is necessary.
Yes, thank you. There is a sentence in the interim board report that says that we are awaiting a confirmation from the Department of Education's Officer of Civil Rights to approve that policy. Yesterday, we met with them and they approved this policy, and they have indicated to us that they are releasing us from the monitoring with respect to our non-discrimination policy.
So, Mr. President, we will remove that sentence from the current version of the policy that's on the public agenda, and the final will be included in the agenda of action. Moving on, Mr. President, to PO2. This is to adopt the annual revisions to the Student Code of Conduct, which is effective September 8th, 2020. EX1 is for the transfer of funds. EX2 is to approve the renewal of the ISB waiver. PR1 is to authorize the third and final renewal agreement with Electrical Joint Apprenticeship and Training Trust. PR2 is to authorize the first renewal agreement with Teaching Strategies. PR3 is to authorize the second and final renewal agreements with various vendors for personalized learning, professional development services. PR4 is to authorize a new agreement with Discovery Education for STEM magnet school services. PR5 is to authorize new agreements with various vendors for online database research subscription services. PR6 is the report on award of construction contracts and changes to construction contracts for the capital improvement program. PR7 is to authorize a new agreement with Pitney Bowes for mail equipment, supplies, and services. And PR8, Mr. President, amends the current board report for para transit and alternative mode of student transportation to add one additional vendor to the pool, vendor Cook DuPage Transportation Company, Inc. And Mr. President, these items do require a vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri,
Yes.
Member Todd Breland,
Yes.
Member Truss,
Yes.
Member Sotelo,
Yes.
President Del Valle.
Yes.
We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. These matters are adopted by the board. Mr. President, I'll continue with additional items on the public agenda that do not require a vote. FN1 is the Chief Financial Officer report for June 2020 on the Emergency Authority. PR9 is the Chief Procurement Officer report for May 2020 on the Delegated Authority. EX3 is the report on principal contracts new. EX4 is the report on principal contracts for renewals. And AR1 is the board report on rescissions. And Mr. President, for the record, I would like to note that AR1 will also be revised and the final will be included in the action. The correction on this is that the number sequence was corrected and a board report number listed as item number 28, 200325 PR10 was added to the list of rescission board reports. Mr. President, these items just need to be accepted by the board.
Please mark received and filed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we proceed with the vote on executive session items, I will continue with the statement to be read into the record regarding the estimate of taxes to be levied. And it reads, report of the Chief Financial Officer pursuant to Board 05-14 and Section 35 ILCS 200/18-60 of the Illinois Property Tax Code. 35 ILCS 200/18-60 of the Illinois Property Tax Code, the code, requires that not less than 20 days prior to the adoption of its aggregate levy, the corporate authority of each taxing district shall determine the amount of money estimated to be necessary to be raised by taxation for the fiscal year upon the taxable property in its district. Section 1870 of the code provides in part that if the estimate of the corporate authority made as provided in Section 1860 is more than 105% of the amount extended or estimated to be extended upon the final aggregate levy of the preceding year, then the corporate authority is required to give public notice of and hold a public hearing on its intent to adopt a levy in excess of 105% of the amount extended or estimated to be extended in the prior year. Board Rule 5-14 delegates to the Chief Financial Officer the authority to annually determine the estimate of property taxes to be levied as required under 35 ILCS 200/18-60 and to report that estimate to the board through the Office of the Secretary of the Board. Board Rule 5-14 also requires that not less than 20 days prior to the adoption of the board's aggregate levy, the Chief Financial Officer shall determine the amount of money estimated to be necessary to be raised by taxation for that fiscal year upon taxable property in the district, and that the estimate shall be deemed an act of the corporate authority upon receipt of the Chief Financial Officer's report of the estimate by the Secretary of the Board. The Chief Finance Officer hereby estimates that the amount of money necessary to be raised by taxation upon the taxable property in the district as defined in Section 1860 of the code is $3,282,773,345 and certifies that this estimated amount is less than the limit defined in Section 1870 of the code. This report is filed with the Secretary of the Board this 22nd day of July 2020. And for the record, Mr. President, we will be posting this statement also on the website, and it will become part of our proceedings. Moving on, Mr. President, to the items for executive session.
We'll proceed.
Thank you. I'll continue with the executive session items from the general counsel. These items do require a vote. The first report is to appoint Assistant General Counsel, Department of Law, Christina McClernand. Second report, appoint Assistant General Counsel, Department of Law, Shelby Smith. The third report is to appoint Assistant General Counsel, Department of Law, Hazel Koshi. The fourth report is to authorize continued retention for the law firm Brothers and Thompson's PC. The fifth report is to authorize continued retention of Hill Law Offices. We then have the sixth report to authorize continued retention of the law office of Linda K. Hogan. The seventh report is to authorize continued retention of the law firm Masters Law. Eighth report, authorize continued retention of the law firm Quinteros, Prieto, Wood, and Boyer, PA. Ninth report, authorize continued retention of the law firm Riley, Safer, Holmes, and Cancilla, LLP. 10th report is to authorize continued retention of the law firm Taft, Satanius, and Hollister, LLP. The 11th report is the workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Mark Gary for case number 16 WC 30191. The 12th report is the workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Jeannie Kim, case number 19 WC 10253. The 13th report is workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Elizabeth Medea, case number 16 WC 028725 and 16 WC 028726. The 14th report is workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Juanita Polinsky, case number 18 WC 13154. The 15th report is workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Joy Talos, case number 17 WC 026977. The 16th report is workers' compensation payment for lump sum settlement for Regina Whitman, case number 12 WC 31447. And the 17th report is to approve payment of proposed settlement regarding JP. And Mr. President, these items do require a vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
We need a second.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Board Member Truss. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Ted Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
Yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. These matters are adopted by the board. Mr. President, I will continue with items from the Chief Executive Officer. These items do require a vote. The first report is the warning resolution for Teresita Gonzalez, tenured teacher assigned to Avondale Logandale Elementary School. And the second report is a warning resolution for James Archambao, tenured teacher assigned to George Washington High School. Mr. President, these items do require a vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Ted Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
President Del Valle?
Yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. These matters are adopted by the board. Mr. President, I will continue with one item from the board. This item does require a vote. It's the resolution approving the Chief Executive Officer's recommendation to dismiss educational support personnel. And Mr. President, this item does require a vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
I second the motion.
There's a second.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez? Member Melendez?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Ted Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
Yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. This matter is adopted by the board. Mr. President, I believe that Board Member Truss has a motion, please.
I move that pursuant to section 2.06D of the Open Meetings Act, board members have reviewed the redacted portions of closed session minutes previously open for public inspection for the period of July 1995 through June 2018. These minutes with noted redaction were open to the by the board at various times from January 2012 to January 2020. The board finds that the need for confidentiality continues to exist for the redacted portions of these minutes, which portions will not be available for public inspection. Upon adoption of this motion, all existing closed session minutes from July 1995 through June 2018 will be available for public inspection with continuing redactions noted.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez? Member Melendez? Member Melendez, are you still on the line? Hello? Give us just 1 second, Mr. President.
Maybe you can come back to her.
Yes, we'll come back to her. Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Todd Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
President Del Valle?
Yes.
Member Melendez, are you on the line?
Then maybe you can proceed and
can
then
pr-
go
we-
back and
This, just for the record, we do
Recorded.
have 6 ayes and 0 nays recorded. This motion is adopted by the board, so we can proceed. The next motion, I believe Board Member Sotelo has a motion.
I move that pursuant to section 2.06D of the Open Meetings Act, the board members have reviewed closed session minutes for the period beginning July 2018 through December 2018. The board members have determined that the need for confidentiality does not exist as those minutes, except as indicated in the redacted portions. Minutes were redacted for the following: privileged attorney-client communications, information subject to privacy or confidentiality protections in state or federal law, and information where the board determines it necessary to protect the public interest or the privacy of an individual. The board finds that the need for confidentiality as to the redacted materials remain. Upon adoption of this motion, all closed session minutes from July 2018 through December 2018 with noted redactions will be available for public inspection.
is there a second?
I second the motion.
I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I got cut off in the prior vote.
Thank you, Member
Can,
Melendez.
can we record her as a yes on the prior vote?
We already took that vote. It's still. that
It's in
motion
the
is still
record, though.
adopted. It's on the record.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving on, so we have a yes for Member Melendez. Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Todd Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. This motion is adopted by the board. And I believe Vice President Reveluri has a motion, please.
I move that the board adopt the minutes of the closed session meeting of June 15th, 2020. Board members have reviewed these meetings along with previously approved minutes of closed sessions from January 2019 through May 2020 in accordance with section 2.06D of the Open Meetings Act. Following this review, board members have determined that the need for confidentiality exists as to all closed session minutes from January 2019 through June 2020, and therefore these minutes will not be available for public inspection.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri?
Yes.
Member Todd Breland?
Yes.
Member Truss?
Yes.
Member Sotelo?
Yes.
And President Del Valle?
Yes,
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. This motion is adopted by the board. And I believe Board Member Todd Breland has a motion, please.
Section 2.06C of the Open Meetings Act permits the destruction of audio recordings of closed session meetings no less than 18 months after the completion of a meeting if the board has 1, approved the minutes of the closed meeting, and 2, approves the destruction. The board's closed session meetings from July 2018 until December 2018 occurred more than 18 months ago, and the board secretary maintains board-approved confidential minutes of all such closed sessions. I move that the audio recordings of the board's closed session meetings from July 2018 until December 2018, as itemized on the attached Appendix A, be authorized for destruction in accordance with the Open Meetings Act.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri,
Yes.
Member Todd Breland,
Yes.
Member Truss,
Yes.
Member Sotelo,
Yes.
President Del Valle.
Yes.
We have 7 ayes and 0 nays. This motion is adopted by the board. And I believe that Board Member Rome has a motion, please.
I move that the record of proceedings of the board meeting of June 24th, 2020, prepared by the board secretary, be approved and that such records of proceedings be posted on the Chicago Board of Education website in accordance with Section 2.06B of the Open Meetings Act.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I'll proceed with a roll call. Member Rome,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Vice President Reveluri,
Yes.
Member Todd Breland,
Yes.
Member Truss,
Yes.
Member Sotelo,
Yes.
and President Del Valle.
Yes.
We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. This motion is adopted by the board. And Mr. President, there are no further items on the executive agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.